Taylor Parker may be the worst woman I have ever covered. The story of what she was capable of has a lot of different tentacles to it, but it takes us to a place where you and I have never been. This is the kind of crime that almost never happens. It is absolutely the stuff of fiction. The idea of somebody cutting a baby out of a pregnant woman is very, very remote, okay? It almost never happens. And when it does, I have never heard of it happening the way it did in this case. This person is a study in some kind of darkness. I'm not saying mental illness, because I don't think that's what it was. Defect, 100%. But this has been going on since the kid was a teen and manifested itself in a culmination of a crime that was one of the most bizarre combinations of delusional and diabolical I have ever seen. And there's a reason the Netflix series is blowing up. And this time, it's good reason. One part of it is the storyteller, maybe because she's a woman, maybe because she's a mom, or maybe just because she's those things and really savvy, it's not about the killer this time. It's not about feeding this curiosity we have about why did she do this? How could she do this as a woman, especially? But you're not going to get any satisfaction on those. Where the satisfaction comes is in understanding all of the players around it. How did they let this happen? How are you with somebody who tells you they're pregnant and you never see it? How do you believe that? How do people who believe there's something weird about her saying she's pregnant, but it never really gets to any point of confrontation? How do you get past the fact that not only would she kill a woman who was good to her and steal the baby out of her stomach while she was still alive, only to let it die in her arms, but there was another child who may have been watching? And how do you do that? How do you bring yourself to that, let alone as a woman and a mother? Why do I keep saying that as a woman, as a mother? Because I've never heard of a woman doing anything like this, and neither have you. And even when it's a man, I believe a man is basically capable of just about any kind of darkness because I've covered it. I've never covered anything like this. Mothers who kill their kids, sure, Andrea Yates covered it in depth. Other moms too, but they're crazy. And I don't know that Taylor Parker is. In fact, I know that she is not, because she didn't plead it, they didn't argue it, and she went through with her trial and she did not testify. And she was convicted of a double murder and is on death row. Women on death row, very, very rare. Women on death row in situations like this, unheard of. And to hear what the family thinks and what they knew and how they process this and how they're dealing with it now is extraordinary. We have to study this case. We have to get into it for two reasons. One, I've never seen anything like it. And two, I'm not sure what to make of it. So let's go on this journey together and talk first with the mother and the sister, not of the killer, of the victim. How did she become close to her? Why? When so many saw so many red flags. This was someone who was bullied, who was ostracized. Why not by Reagan? And how did this all come to fruition? And where has it left them today? After that, we're going to talk to the director of this. And let me tell you, this was a brave choice to tell a story like this and to make the decision that Jessica Dimmock made, that I'm not going to focus on the killer. I'm going to focus on the people around her. And this question of how did everybody live it and watch it get to this point is fascinating. And I wanted to ask her about those choices and how she reconciles being a mother and a woman with what this woman and mother was capable of. Amazing. Let's take this trip together. Jessica, I'll start with you. First of all, obviously, I'm so grateful for the opportunity of getting to meet you both and for you deciding to talk about, which is absolutely the most painful conversation to have. So thank you both.
Yes, thank you for having us. We are a Christian family. We always have been. And myself, speaking for myself, and our family's very close. So I have had to lean on God with everything I have, to be honest. And now, you and others that are giving us this platform, I refuse to let Reagan and Braxton's life be ended basically by evil. I still feel like they serve a purpose on this world, and that's become my purpose. And that is what helps me to function day to day is for them and for our family and for other people, trying to help prevent this from happening again. So, as a mother, finding a purpose, going through this kind of grief is the most important thing I could have done.
Emily, what was the impression that your sister put on you when you were watching her live her life and make her choices? How did you understand it?
Well, she she definitely threw me a few curveballs. It was a lot. Um I could see myself trying to live up to what she had accomplished at such a young age, cuz once I finished high school, I was like, I'm going to go to college, I'm going to do this. And watching her uh uh, conquer all these milestones before she was 21, I was like, wow, okay, so I've got a lot to live up to. I've got to try and do these things. But she always made sure to make me feel like I didn't have to do that. I did not have to do what she did. And she did absolutely take the hard road to conquer those things, but she made it look so easy. And I was mind blown, because I was like, okay, she's got a kid, she's got this, and now she's buying cars and a house, and I'm like over here driving this little rinky dink car, and she buying a new one, and it was the most impressive thing I could have ever witnessed. And the way that she went about it was so, what's the word? Dang, it just slipped my mind. Almost professional, but there's another word I'm looking for.
Methodical?
Yes, yes. She had a method to getting what she wanted, and she knew that she had to get what she wanted to be able to get, you know, the house and the family.
So, my takeaway from watching, from reading, from thinking, Jessica, is that this kid was an old soul, as we used to say. Okay. Who knows if that's even a thing, but it feels like a thing. How did you reconcile her being an old soul with befriending Taylor? In obviously in the beginning, okay, not with the benefit of hindsight, but there is a sense in watching that like there were flags, but not for Reagan. Why? What are we picking up? What do we have to understand about why she wanted to be friends with her early on and how you saw it as her mom, Jessica?
Sure. Well, we raised our kids to care about the underdogs, if I could say that, to not um determine a person's friendship or anything like that by what they have, who they are, their race, anything. And then Reagan, she was that person. She would be there for anyone, for the underdog. From what I understood, Taylor was undergoing some issues when she took her Reagan's wedding pictures. She didn't have her kids, and we were told that her exes were giving her a hard time about seeing her children and stuff. And so, of course, that touched Reagan. That's, for Reagan, being a mama, your kids are the most important thing, and she was wanting to be there for another mother. Um, And on top of that, the girl was there. She didn't know anybody at the wedding. And so for Reagan, offering or inviting her to hang out afterwards was just something to do.
Mm.
Don't exclude anyone, include everyone. And so that's who she was. I mean, she
Mm.
just, like you said, an old soul that we don't have very much of anymore. She cared about people until she had a reason not to. And even then she still would forgive.
I was gonna say she had a really big heart for forgiveness. Also, you could definitely um, do things, and there's been several people in her life that did things that you or me would have like been like, okay, I'm distancing myself from you. I don't want nothing to do with you. And Reagan had the heart to forgive and allow those people another chance in her life to give them the benefit of the doubt. That was just the type of person she was.
When you, Emily, saw how Taylor was befriending your sister, and what did you make of the nature of her interest? Did you have any suspicions? Did it seem like it was a lot, or how did it come off to you?
Well, the way that Reagan introduced Taylor to all of us, it really, I had no idea that Reagan didn't know Taylor for very long. I really didn't, because I was away at college. So it was more difficult for me and Reagan to have the relationship that we had early on. And so when I was at her wedding, she was like, this is Taylor, she's going to take our pictures, and it felt like she was just one of us that Reagan had known forever. It truly did not feel like Taylor was just some stranger that my sister had just met.
And you didn't get any vibe from her. I know it's like impossible to
No,
not
no.
factor in what you know about her now from then, but if you can.
Really, even knowing what she's done now and looking back, there were absolutely no signs whatsoever meeting this woman that she could have been as evil as she was.
Mm.
Um, she was just a normal country girl that had the same interest as all of us. She loved everything that we did, and there was nothing odd about it, because of course my sister had lots of friends with similar interests, so it never raised a red flag that
Mm.
this one girl would be so obsessed with what we did that would mean she's crazy.
So let's talk about this. What motivated this? Jessica, we're using the words evil, we're using the words crazy. I think you can be both. You can be one or the other or both. How do you understand Taylor at this point?
Um, it's hard to not say evil, to be honest, because
And
for
crazy or just evil?
I think just evil. I really do, because there's such a fine line that we use the word crazy so often,
Yeah.
that it's just become that's what a person is if they don't think the same way a normal person would think. And so I agree that there is a crazy, but I believe that she is just evil because you know it's so hard to imagine what she did. What I saw when I saw it. And my post the night, that we posted, or the day after that I posted, evil in the flesh. It was Satan in the flesh. That's all that I could say that could do what was done to Reagan.
I've
And
never heard of
even,
anything like this before.
no,
From a woman. I mean, we've all heard crazy stories of different types of baby stealing,
yes.
but this was a sustained effort, Emily, to get close to somebody, maybe because she was pregnant,
Yeah.
kill her, steal her baby, and like think that she was going to get away with it, Emily. That's the part that takes you from evil into this is beyond any sense of intelligence. Like, how did you think you'd get away with this? What do you
Yeah.
tell yourself about that part, Emily?
Um and I feel like when I use the word crazy, I mean like the steps that she took to get to where she was just feel insane. But I know no crazy person could have gotten this all strategically planned out like she did. I know, back to your question, that trying to figure out how to set that apart. Um,
Well, the reason I'm asking, Emily, is I always wonder, people who've lived through what your family has, how do you trust people? How do you meet new people? Like, how do you see people? Because this is like you said, she's just like us.
yeah.
Same interests, same everything. Didn't see anything in her eye. Didn't, nothing of that. And she
Mhm.
wound up being about as far away from anything you recognize and anyone you know as imaginable. So, where does that leave you in terms of how you see people now?
I feel like as Reagan's family, like myself and of course our close family members, trusting people is very difficult. I couldn't tell you how many new people I've allowed in my life since this happened in 2020. And some people I do regret not allowing to be my friend, but at the same time, there's just this mental blocker that doesn't allow me to let these people in my lives. And now since I had been pregnant and I've had a child, it is absolutely the most important thing for me is to make sure I protect my inner circle. And me and mom will conversate about certain things, or I'll tell her about these people, and me and her will both get to this hesitant anxiety feeling that we don't want to trust this person who may be a very good Christian woman or something along that lines, but because of the betrayal that we've received now, that it's almost impossible to make new friends. And it sounds kind of crazy, I guess, to say that, but it does feel that way. The only people that I really talk to are people that I've known for years and family.
Jessica, help me with something,
Yeah.
and don't be delicate, because you have to tell me if something is too difficult for you. I've never heard anyone describe coming upon a murder scene the way you do. And the and it's not just, how does anybody look at a loved one, let alone a child. I totally get that. As a parent and someone who's done this for a long time, I get it. Unnatural. But you couldn't go in the house, and you knew there was a kid somewhere that you had to find, and there's no question that this family loves each other. Everybody gets it. It's one of the layers of the tragedy, frankly, is why a family like this, why such a family that tries to do things the right way. Help me understand what that was that kept you from being able to even go one step further.
Either. Honestly, I don't. So I kind of a little off track, but not really. So I had never heard the 911 call until we got to see the documentary. Um, in my brain, I do not remember talking
Mm.
that way. I remember being upset and I was calling 911, telling them they've hurt my baby, but I don't remember screaming.
New Boston 911, what's your emergency? Ma'am. Ma'am.
Help me, my daughter's been murdered.
Okay, where are you located at? In New Boston?
Yeah.
What happened?
I don't know. Somebody got in her house. She's dead.
Okay.
Dead.
Okay.
Everywhere.
Okay, is your phone number?
Yeah.
Okay.
Help me.
Okay, stay on the line with me, okay?
Oh, our grandbaby. Oh, my God. I can't do this.
Ma'am, ma'am, can you tell me what happened?
What?
64161. 64161. Ma'am, can you tell me what happened?
I don't know what happened. Her husband couldn't get her on the phone. She didn't go to work.
All units are headed to for a possible COA.
Oh, my Yeah, it's my daughter.
Okay, do you know what happened to her, ma'am?
My grandbaby. I don't know. There's blood everywhere. She's standing on her floor.
However, when I opened the door, well, as I came up to the door and I saw this bloody fingerprint, something in me just said, don't touch it. So I got my shirt to turn the knob. Um, I opened the door, I saw what I saw, and I stepped back. And of course, at first I didn't see Reagan. And so I shut the door, I stepped back after I saw the bloody footprint in the kitchen. And I just stood there a minute. I'm like, wait, if she's hurt, I've got to check on her. I can't just leave her there. I'm here. I have to check on her. And so I opened the door again, and that's when I saw her body. And I don't know why. I don't know how I was logical at all, but I knew I had to preserve the crime scene. I could, if I went in, what was I going to mess up as far as being able to find the person that did this to her? And so for me, it was very hard, but I knew already that she was gone. There was no question that Reagan was no longer with us. And so for me to feel like I needed to go to her to comfort her or to check on her, I knew there was no sense in it. As far as her daughter, I knew, in the back of my mind, I knew she was still in the house. But at that moment, honestly, just to be fair, honest, I didn't think about her still being in there. My thought was in that spot at that moment. And until my husband got there and started, asking where she was, and then it clicked. I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know. I don't know. Cause I had hot screamed, for Reagan when I got there. And so I don't understand to this day how I was in my mind enough to know that I didn't need to interrupt the crime scene any more than it already was. So that's kind of what held me back, to be honest. I knew she was gone.
It's too unnatural for you to understand the steps because you've never done anything like that again, and God forbid you'll never do anything like that again. Did you know? My understanding is you found your daughter face down. In your mind, were you processing that there's a baby on the other side? There's supposed to be a baby on the other side, or no? It was just too horrible, and she was gone, and that was it. That was the limit of it.
Sure. When I found her, that that did not process. Obviously, I knew she was pregnant, but it didn't process with me until the police officer pulled up, and I knew I had to let him know that she was pregnant, not knowing how long she had been gone. I didn't know if Braxton was still alive in her. I had to let them know. So it was at the moment the police officer pulled up that I was telling him, just know she's pregnant. I don't know if the baby survived. Just understand that, just please check on the baby. And so, yeah, when I found her, it didn't process until law enforcement showed up.
Emily, the baby's name, Braxlin. Do you guys decide names in advance, or did the family decide and the dad decide to give the baby a name after this?
No, yeah, they had already picked out her name. Reagan and Homer had come up with it together because Homer's middle name was Lynn. So they named her Brax Lynn, and say what? Who was the middle name after? It was one of Homer's family members, wasn't it? Yes.
Yeah, I believe so. I believe
One
so.
of Homer's family members is who the middle name come from, and I believe, Reagan was very strong on, this is her and Homer's first child together. And so they took very much pride in finding the perfect name for Miss Little Braxlin. And so when we lost her, Reagan and Braxlin, uh, we knew Braxton's name, and all we could ask was where she was when we found out she was gone. Was, well, when can we see Braxton? Where is Braxton? Will we ever get to see her? Because we knew from my sister's appointments that Braxton was perfect. She had no issues. That she could go into labor any day. Like it was one of those situations that we knew. We knew Braxton was at the age of we would actually get to see my niece, our grandbaby that was taken away.
What did it mean to you, Jessica, when you were told that the baby wasn't there?
That was a whole nother situation in itself. We did not know that she wasn't, obviously police officers, they were investigating at the scene. We were there. They took pictures of our shoes and all this stuff was going on. And never asked again, where she was. I think my husband had gone up, well, how's the baby? Is the baby okay? Where is Braxlin? And all the officer would tell him is the baby, the
The
baby's
baby's
gone,
just,
is what
yeah,
he
the
would
baby's
say.
gone or the baby's deceased, one of those were.
Yeah, never in our mind did it process that she was physically gone, so I found out my husband was on the phone talking with his brother. I overheard the conversation that something was on Facebook. And so nobody would say anything to me. They were trying to protect me. So I get on Facebook, and this was 10, 11, probably 2 hours after we had found her. I get on Facebook, and our local newspaper had posted an article, local New Boston mother murdered, baby cut from womb. And so that's how I found out. It was terrible, terrible.
Boy,
I
in
asked,
real time like that, because
yeah,
this all started, I assume everybody knows so much about this case, which is a blessing and a curse, right? Is
yes,
that this was the morning you guys are so close that when your daughter wasn't responding to calls, her husband was like, this isn't right. And you guys just rushed right over because you're that close.
yes.
Um, and that's when you found your daughter. And then within a couple of hours, it was already on social media.
Absolutely. Yes. And we don't know how it got to them, because from what we understood, it wasn't supposed to have been leaked to anyone. It was supposed to be internal to the investigation still. And so, yeah.
And when did you then learn that the person that was involved in what was done to your daughter
Mhm.
was her friend?
Mm. We had actually, I had gotten to the point that I needed to go home. So my husband took me home. And we had tons of friends there. So we're all just trying to get whatever information we could get. Small town, we have people that we can reach out to see where we're at, what's happening, things like that. And we got information that they had a person in Idabel. And so we started digging on that. And a friend of ours was talking with someone, and they said the name, Taylor Morton, I believe is what they said at that time. And I was like, or Taylor, they said Taylor Parker, I'm sorry. And I knew her as Taylor Morton. But they said the name, and Homer was there, of course. We were all at our house. And I said, Homer, they said Taylor Parker. Do you know who that is? And he was like, well, yeah, she was at our house last night. That's the girl that took pictures at our wedding. And I was like, what? I said, well, they're saying that that's who they've got. That's who they've arrested. And he's like, no, no way. That she was just at our house last night. Her and Reagan's been talking. So we were like, that's, no way. And only after, I think, some um, news broadcasts came out did we actually accept that it was her. And just unbelievable. Just could not process it.
There's so much coming at you.
Mhm.
Thank God your granddaughter is okay.
Yes.
Although it also raises the question, Emily, in terms of who does this, okay? Um, who does this knowing that a 3-year-old, and this is a mother, okay? This is a mother twice over, right? 3 times in her mind, but twice over, right? Does this with knowing that they're going to expose another kid to it. What did that tell you, or what does it tell you, Emily?
Truly, I think she had some intentions of harming my niece, Reagan's daughter. At some point, I think that was why Reagan put up the fight that she did, protecting her babies, both of them. And we decided to this day that when she took my sister's life and had Braxlin out, that God stepped in, that He had an angel standing in the hallway, making sure she did not touch my niece, um, because my niece knew her. My niece knew this woman. That was a, that could have been the key factor of how she got caught. Like, um, which of course her being 3, that's irrelevant to the case itself, but in someone's mind who's trying to get away with this, we knew that um she had to have intentions of harming my niece, but 100% believe God stepped in, was like, you've taken enough, just go. And that is the reason why my niece is still here today. I don't think she had any intentions of uh, guarding her at all from
Mm.
what she witnessed.
And
She
I think
wasn't
that's where
she
the evil
wasn't
comes
she
in.
wasn't
Yes, and that's where
spared.
the evil.
She
No,
wasn't spared by this person.
no.
Um she's alive anyway. Jessica, how is your granddaughter?
She's well. She's 9 now and in third grade, and smartest little thing you'd ever meet, I think, of course. But she's a lot like her mama. Very, very kind-hearted. Old soul seems to be already. She just she's for what she's been through, she is probably the most amazing little girl I've ever met. She's so strong, and again, so caring and just funny. She's got the cutest personality. She's wonderful. Um, of course, she'll live with this forever. We don't know what she saw. We have not asked what she
Mm-hmm.
saw,
Interesting.
and we're not going to. That is, you give her space and you give her what she needs to understand. If she wants to talk, that she can. But yeah, we don't want to push the subject at all.
And you're getting advice and counsel about what the right way is to help her grow and process.
She and I did go to counseling together, from the time it happened through the end about 21. And on top of that, my counselor helped me understand kind of
Good.
what to do and help her with. And then, of course, um, I'm a nurse. And so I had psychology classes in college and stuff. And it was something I was very interested in. So I retained a lot of that on how to, tread lightly with children.
So, well, look, I mean, there's a blessing again. This is a blessing in her youth, but you don't know where it is. But she's got the right people around her. Being a clinician, Jessica, means that you know what it takes to physically do what this woman did. How does that affect your understanding?
It makes it difficult, of course, just to know. One thing I can say is my mom, uh, during the trial, was in a motorcycle accident and had head trauma. And she says this up until then, that's what we all feared, what Reagan went through, what pain she suffered, what fears she had. But my mom said, when she had her accident and suffered a traumatic brain injury, um, that it told her that once her head was injured, that it's probable that Reagan didn't feel
Mm.
anything necessarily. And so that kind of, even being a nurse or being anything, you don't know if you haven't experienced it. You have the clinical knowledge, but you don't have the physical, personal knowledge.
There's a
And so
measure
my
of
mom,
solace in what your
yes,
mom said.
yes,
I totally understand that, and it's totally within the realm of possibility. So that's enough.
yes.
Um, Now you get to the processing of why this happened, and you've seen the documentary. You've seen all of the evidence. Obviously, the body cam footage first of the pullover and how Taylor presented herself to authorities and the compelling nature of the narrative she designed. When you watched that, what, how did you process it?
Oh, well, we had not seen the body cam until after trial. And so it really didn't surprise me. She has no remorse. She shows no empathy. She shows nothing, you know, she doesn't take any responsibility for what she's done. And so seeing that, it was just another one of her lies that she was carrying out. All of her life she's lied about things, and that was easy for her to act that way, to act like she had actually given birth. And so it really didn't surprise me at that point. Maybe it would have beforehand, but it didn't for me.
Emily, when there are the interrogations in the hospital, I mean, there's like zero chance Taylor's getting away with this.
Yeah.
Okay. Zero chance. What did it mean to you that she was acting like she was telling the truth?
I think she was at that point where she was trying to convince herself of the lie because from seeing, which I saw in court and then I saw it again with the documentary, of course, because mom wasn't allowed in there being a key witness. But I I knew from the body cam footage of the pullover, she knew right then and there she was caught. She was caught, and that was it. She was trying to find every route she could to get out of it. And like you said, when they started interviewing her in the hospital bed, um, at that point, I think she was literally trying to convince herself that she did this, or like she had this baby, even though she knew she didn't. Um, it told me that she still had this method of trying to get out of it. Is what it did. It told me that she's got a plan to keep herself out of trouble is what she was doing. She had no, like mom said, no remorse, no intention of feeling sorry for what she did. She completely was thinking about herself. Because not once did she ask about Braxton. She didn't care how the baby was. She told him she'd only had 2 kids when technically, if the baby was hers, she had 3. So things were just not adding up. She was really trying to, I think, paint the picture that she was crazy. I think she knew she had this plan. I'm going to make them think that I had no idea what I was doing, and which she did, of course.
Do you think she had this plan since when?
It depends
Honest,
on how you're
yeah,
asking because planned on Reagan or planned in general because I think she had multiple people that she was watching that she was going to target, and Reagan just happened to fall into the list of what the investigators found.
Why do you think? Do you think, because if you think about it, the motivation, pregnant, not pregnant, having a baby, not having the baby, you know, what do you think was going on in her head, Jessica, that this was about for her?
well, at that in the beginning, I believe, the um wanting to be with Wade, wanting to make him love her, thinking that having his baby, be telling him she's pregnant, is going to make him stay. He's a country boy. You expect not just country boys, but you expect a man that's respectful to be there for his child and the woman that's pregnant with his child. And I think that that was initially her plan, just to make him love her. Um, I don't believe in the beginning that this was the plan, that murder was in her plan in the beginning. I believe that as time went on, um, she got to, the point of being able to miscarry and saying that she had miscarried. She got to that point, and I think about that time was when people started coming forward and saying, this something's not right. Something I don't think something's right. And then as she got to the due date and past the due date, and that's when people really started leaning on the fact that she was lying. It came out she's had a hysterectomy. She's not pregnant, trying to make her boyfriend understand that this is a lie. This is not real, But she had lies to cover that up. She had that planned already, how she was going to make him continue to believe her. So I
But
believe
that's the
that.
part that doesn't make any sense. Look, this is
Mhm.
this is crazy within crazy, right?
Yeah, oh,
Doing
absolutely.
this at all, like, oh, I've got to be pregnant, and people have done that many times. All of us know many stories of women telling men that they're pregnant because they don't want to lose them. Okay,
Exactly.
um, so okay, that we get makes
Mhm.
sense.
Yeah.
But now you get to the point where people know you're not pregnant. Usually somebody just goes like this, right? At some point, wait, or somebody just lifts a, and
Yeah.
it's this that never happened here. How do
Mm-mm.
you understand that part of people were suspicious? I mean, suspicious. Either you're pregnant or you're not, and
Yeah.
either that's a belly or it's not a belly.
Right.
How did she not get discovered?
Right. Well, like it's been said, she said throughout the pregnancy that she was having difficulties. At one point she said she was in the hospital, I think maybe for blood pressure scare or something. It was always something was wrong with her. It wasn't a healthy pregnancy. And so she got to the point, from what I understand, that she told Wade that, they couldn't do anything because of this health scare or this health problem. And he had not been a father. He's not a father. He's not dealt with a pregnant woman before, personally. So he didn't know what to expect. And that's understandable. Um, and her, she would withdraw from him, trying to make him think that, well, I'm sick, or it's too dangerous to do this, or to be intimate, or things like that. And so, yeah, like I said, she had it planned. She knew what she had.
Intimacy, I get.
Mhm.
Invisibility is harder
Exactly.
to understand,
Right.
especially if someone is telling you, Emily, I don't know about this.
Hmm.
I don't know. I mean, it seems like it's something that's very obvious to discover. One, you could always call the doctor, right? You're the father, you'd want to know.
Yeah.
Do you think is this ignorance, or is this not wanting to deal with it, or did she have some hold over him? Do you think maybe he was scared? Like what was it?
Truly, I don't know Wade good enough to know. I've had several people who said, they knew Wade for quite some time, and in vocabulary, ignorant might be the right word, like he doesn't understand that he's doing anything wrong by not checking up on it, but not checking up on it is kind of not the way to go about it. But like mom said, he's never had a kid before, and his mindset was, okay, she's had two. I don't need to do anything. She knows what to do at this point. I'm just here for support.
Do you
Um,
think he was told what you discovered, which is people coming forward saying, I talked to her mom. She had a hysterectomy. Okay. There's no,
yeah.
everybody knows what that word means, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And
I 100% believe he was told those things, but she had. I don't know what kind of hold she had on him, but she had something that kept him in line with her lies. It was the multiple phones, the
Mhm.
the manipulation, the mind games, everything that she had planned and played on him prior to even being pregnant with her mom being this evil, you know, nasty woman is what she played out to Wade. And so when people came out saying, well, her mom said she's got a hysterectomy, and that was then a game she could play. This is my card. I dealt it with you already, and now I'm gonna win with it because you believe my mom's crazy. So why would why what she told these people be the truth if she's, this bad person? And so I think she was strategic, for sure, on how she manipulated Wade. She made all of these little puzzle pieces fit. So when it come down to the final pieces, she could say, okay, well, I've already told you this piece. So this piece right here has to fit because I'm telling you, she's crazy, she's evil, she's bad. Why wouldn't she lie about me having a hysterectomy? Why she doesn't want me to have your baby? Things like that are kind of what make it make sense in my mind.
mhm.
Because I do have the same feeling as you. It's hard to even wrap your head around how a man could not understand his wife being pregnant.
Well, the man, everyone around them, really,
Yeah.
Jessica, do you think that the plan in her mind was for Braxlin not to survive? Or do you think the baby not surviving was a surprise to her?
Um, I don't think she cared either way. She just had to have a baby. So if she survived, great. If she didn't, I've got a body. I don't think she cared at that point about that part of it. If she did, she wouldn't have hurt Reagan as bad as she did. You know.
Help me
That
understand
part.
that.
And
Well,
sorry.
knowing that, if it's okay, babe, knowing that, if she was going to kill the mother, that she would have to make this C-section quick because of the oxygen depletion. And so, luckily for Braxton, Reagan was still alive when she took her out, but If Taylor didn't expect that with all that she did to Reagan, Taylor expected her to be dead, cut her open, take the baby. So that being said, I truly don't believe that she cared either way.
That and from sitting in court and hearing the investigators, or, the DA explain the events after Reagan had been murdered and Braxton had been removed, how Taylor took the time to clean herself, wash up, change into more clothes, go
Reagan's
dump
clothes.
right my sister's clothes in the body cam footage. She's wearing Reagan's clothes. Um, so she changes, she takes a shower, um, leaving Braxton, just there, alive, and not taking any steps to make sure she was going to keep living. And then, of course, driving to dump evidence off, and then coming back to go to Idabel. She had no intention of Braxton being alive when they got to the hospital. 100% no intention. I think it was by the grace of God that they got a heartbeat back, because the heartbeat coming back, intending, she was born alive, is the reason why we were able to get this woman on death row. And that is 100% the best, the best feeling I can have about it. Not that I wished, that my sister was conscious during it and anything of that sort. But I am grateful that Braxton was born alive, because um, it did help us get Taylor where she deserves.
The last line of the documentary, hell is too good for her. For each of you, what is justice here?
I don't know. I've thought about that, honestly. Nothing's going to bring Reagan and Braxton back. Nothing. So for me, honestly, I think justice is legislation. Having something that will prevent this in the future. Nothing we do to her, um, death is easy. You go to sleep and that's it. So nothing we do to her is going to bring our girls back. The legislation we can get put into place that can do something for the future, and for me that is justice, seeing a difference, seeing a change made for me.
What is the change that you want here? Because this is a very niche thing to protect against. You got to tell people when someone's faking a pregnancy
Yeah.
Yeah.
rule.
It's very, very difficult. So, our goal is, of course, on the state level, we're looking at fraudulent activity, criminal activity, as far as lying about being pregnant, receiving gifts, getting Medicaid or anything that they could receive from claiming they're pregnant. Federally is the HIPAA laws, of course. You mentioned earlier Wade reaching out to the doctor and just asking. Well, that's part of it. Even being the father, or even if he were her husband, if he wasn't on the list that she provided to the doctor's office, they still can't tell him anything. They still couldn't release that information. So for me, watching the documentary, because I wasn't able to be in the courtroom, was hearing the doctor say, we couldn't do anything. We couldn't tell anyone what we knew. They did the hysterectomy, but they could at the least, notify hospitals to be on alert. And that's not good enough. That is not good enough, because they knew before she was to the point of a miscarriage. They knew before then that she was lying. And then once it got past the miscarriage stage, they were concerned. And that's what caused the concern for possible abduction of a child.
I don't understand that. Wouldn't
Yeah.
they know immediately whether or not she was pregnant? Why did they have to? Why is the miscarriage
Mhm.
period relevant here, Emily? I mean, when you go to the OBGYN, they're the ones who tell you you're pregnant.
Yeah.
They don't tell you that when you get to 5 months or whatever, whatever the
Right.
period
No.
is that we're looking at for the first trimester.
Um, I think it's important for their mindset of they knew she was lying, and the only way for her to get out of that lie was two things: tell the truth, which she wasn't capable of, or miscarry this pregnancy. And which, of course, that's what they were really hoping for. They were hoping she would just either miscarry or tell the truth, because they knew she wasn't going to tell the truth. So, um, their point on, knowing she cannot miscarry anymore, she has to produce a baby, was their turning point of, okay, there's a danger here. Unfortunately, it wasn't enough of a danger because of our laws. They couldn't notify the people who need to know these things. And so that's kind of the point of the legislation, is so these doctors who get put in this situation can say, okay, look, it's now it's a crime, to fake a pregnancy.
Right.
So let me notify the police. So maybe this woman won't go that far, whether it be stealing a baby or murdering a pregnant woman, or whatever the case may be. That's kind of the road that we're trying to go towards, is making it more difficult for these women to just fake a pregnancy in general, not necessarily
Right.
get to the point that we're at now.
And
You
it's a
know,
very fine line we
Yes.
have to
yeah, it
walk
That's
is.
the
Yeah,
fine
because
line.
we
look,
do
this is
not want.
tricky. This is
Yeah.
tricky. And this
Yeah.
is something that they've probably never heard of before.
Right.
But look, I think it's a way to put pain to purpose. And, to the extent that you can make anything better after something like this, why not give it everything you got? The director made a really interesting choice of excluding the killer from the narrative, um, because they're usually shaped around the killer for obvious reasons. How, Jessica, do you deal with wanting, needing, curiosity about how she explains this? Do you have any, or you don't care what she says? You don't need to know what she wants to say was in her head or in her heart, to the extent she has one?
Well, of course, I would like to, but it's going to be about her. She's written multiple letters since she was even in the county jail waiting on trial. Um, just not taking responsibility for anything. The phone calls with her mother, well, they'll do anything, they'll throw anything on me just to look better. You murdered somebody. Of course, they're what are they going to do?
Murdered two
So I
people.
don't yeah, I don't think anything that she says is
Mm.
is going to be truthful. Honestly, it's going to be about her trying to make her look like she's remorseful, trying to make her a good person. And I don't want to hear it, because I don't believe it is going to be um, sincere. Emily mentioned something, and some people have kind of given her a little backlash on it about, a preacher told her that she can be forgiven on this earth, just not by us. Well, it doesn't mean that we're not supposed to forgive her. It means that our forgiveness doesn't matter what happens to her in eternity, if you believe that. God's forgiveness is what matters. So it's not that we're not supposed to forgive her or anything or like that. So that, as far as that said, your question, anything she has to say, it wouldn't make a difference to me. She
Mm.
has
Well,
other
that's all that
yeah.
matters. Look, religion aside, there's only one good reason to forgive somebody who wrongs you, and that is to stop their ability to hurt you.
To keep hurting you.
There's a power of forgiveness. Forgiveness takes a lot of forms and can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people. There is a path when someone is hurting and the hurting is continued because the person didn't admit it, or it's just too much loss, or it's what they say, where they're continuing to victimize you. They have control over how you feel about life, that the forgiveness is a way of ending that. Not that it's okay. Of course, it's not okay. It'll never be okay. There's nothing about it that's remotely any definition of okay. But you don't get to be in control of how I feel about you anymore. That part
Yes.
is over. That can be very appealing to some people, Emily.
Yeah, I do agree with that, and truly I'm working on it, because I want her to quit being a burden, absolutely hearing that death penalty being served to her was a huge weight off of my chest, um, because I was only able to think about what she did to my sister prior to that. Now it's more so of, like you're saying, the pain that she's caused. Allowing her to still have that is very difficult, and I'm really struggling to get that forgiveness.
Mm.
But I want to, because I want to have peace.
Yeah.
I really do, because I don't want to hold this anger and um, these terrible feelings and thoughts towards her. I don't want to hold those in my mind or in my heart, because that doesn't do me any good. It damages me more than it does anything. um and I do see forgiveness in the future. It's just hard day to day to think about it, really.
Look, I mean,
Like you
the
said,
only
because of
question is
what
whether or
she
not it helps you. If
yeah,
it helps you, that's the end of the analysis,
yeah.
because you owe that to yourself, obviously.
Thank
Obviously. Let me ask you one last thing, and I appreciate you guys so much opening your hearts and your minds to helping us understand what you've had to go through and gone through beautifully, as an example of grace, as far as I'm concerned. If and when the time comes for the judgment to be executed on uh, this murderer, do you want to be there, Jessica?
In the beginning, I was absolutely, I will be there. Not only after the documentary came out, my husband, I was standing there one night and it just hit me. I was like, do you really think we should go? I said, because Reagan didn't have anybody with her when she died. Why should we give somebody to her when she goes?
Mm.
And he was like, I understand that. He said, but I think if you don't, that you're going to regret it, because he knows me so well. So yes, I will be there.
Mm.
Absolutely.
Emily?
I do believe I will be there, because she watched the life drain out of my sister, and I would gladly love to do the same to her, and that says a lot, and that's why I say, I have to get this forgiveness, because of the anger and everything. But that is how I feel. I want to witness her last breaths like she did my sister, because she did not hold anything back from Reagan. So um, once she is executed, that will be a statement that I have to be there and make, in the footprint of my sister. Uh, and I just want to say this last piece about earlier, when you said hearing her statement, her talking about why she would have done these things. And in my mindset from the beginning, before we were ever asked to do a documentary, um, after trial, I was saying, I don't want to hear a word from her, because she had the opportunity to get on the stand, defend herself, and tell what she had to say. And she didn't want to do that. So, I mean, she was guilty either way, and she knew that part. So, getting on the stand and saying what she needed or what she wanted to say would have done her little justice for herself. But she chose not to do that, and so I don't believe that she has any room to speak.
Well said. Emily, Jessica, I'm so sorry
Mm.
for the loss that your family has suffered. But I don't know what it means to you, but I will say this: you are a lesson in how to deal with pain, how to put it
Thank
to purpose, and how to lean on family and faith. And
you.
I wish you nothing but better chapters ahead. And if there's anything I can do to help that be the case, you know how to get me.
Thank
Thank
you
you so
so
much,
much.
Chris.
And yeah,
All right.
just the acknowledgement of the story. We certainly appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate you sharing the story with me. And I look forward to hearing about the next chapters. You're all still so young.
Oh, yes.
And you've been through a lot, but hopefully there's a lot more. People of faith, we always wonder,
Yeah.
why us? Why this? Why now? Why that? The mystery of faith is that you'll see what it is when it's time to see it.
When it's time.
So thank you very much for sharing this experience with me.
You're so welcome.
Jessica, thank you so much for joining me to talk about the story you told.
Of course, of course.
So help me understand, just as a storyteller, the decision of, you know what? Not this time. This time it's not about the killer. It's about everybody else. And I'll make that just as compelling. How?
Yeah, I mean, listen, there's always a little bit of a research process. I wanted to know what Taylor was up to when she was arrested. I wanted to know what she was up to while she was in jail, awaiting trial. I wanted to know what she said, but in looking into all those things, there's no indication that there's remorse. There's no indication that there's honesty. She was continuing to kind of spin stories about what happened and how it wasn't actually her, or it was her, but it was a gang. And I mean, it goes on. And it just felt, when it came to telling the story, I'm like, what could she possibly say that that I could believe? I don't believe she's remorseful. If she did say she's remorseful, I probably wouldn't believe her anyway. This whole story is about this kind of insane, evil ride that she takes everyone on. And I just wanted everyone else to have an opportunity to talk about her without really giving her an opportunity to counter that narrative.
The
Because I don't think it's
juxtapose.
worthy of countering.
So, well, countering, I agree. But here's the temptation. This is the craziest woman I think I have ever, I've never heard of a woman doing anything like this before. Just, there's a term for people who cut babies out of people,
Yeah.
which is bizarre in and of itself. But women doing this in these circumstances is, it's the most rare of the rarest of things. And there is something from a storyteller, journalist perspective so compelling, because this is such a rare kind of, I guess, evil.
Mhm.
How do you explain what this represents and balancing that choice?
Well, I think that I really wanted to explore the kind of shockwaves that it sends, because as you were talking about with Reagan's family, because there are, like, especially for the victim, there's no warning signs. I'm very aware, because I pay attention to these types of stories. Being a woman who's pregnant is a very vulnerable time in a woman's life. I don't think most people realize that the number one cause of death
It's
for
homicide.
women is homicide.
Yeah.
And maybe now it's been surpassed by overdoses and drugs, but it's
very
right
close.
there neck and neck. And most people don't know this. So being a pregnant woman is like a very vulnerable time. But it never looks like this. Women are killed by their husbands, by their boyfriends, by, someone that they're seeing that doesn't want their wife to find. And there's such a crazy amount of violence that's kind of directed towards pregnant women. But this comes out of nowhere. For everyone in Taylor's life, there is like so much weirdness going on. But on the Reagan side, and for that family, this is like a bolt of lightning that comes out of the sky. And I really wanted to be able to, like, show that both of those things could be true, that there was all of these kind of red flags and warnings and things not adding up over here for the people that were quite close. And then if you were slightly removed, there was no warning. There was no stalking of Reagan. There wasn't threatening phone calls. There wasn't threats on her. Like, it was just, it came out of nowhere. And so those were the aspects that I felt like the most important to explore, and also maybe were the biggest lessons for us as citizens. Like, what does it mean to ignore a red flag? What does, could danger look like? A lot of different things. This is not what we think of when we think of what danger looks like. And so those were the aspects I was the most interested in exploring.
Really compelling, and they come through beautifully in the story that you told. Taylor's mom What did she mean to you in this, and what was your level of approach there?
Yeah, I mean, we did reach out to her. She did not get back to us or want to participate, which I wasn't surprised by. A thing that I kept on thinking in making this was that there were so many times that Taylor, went to a doctor or complained about a malady or went to the hospital and was sent home without a diagnosis in as much of, like, she's complaining about having MS. She says she has cancer. She's sent home with, you don't have cancer, you don't have MS. They're quite possibly and probably should have been, there was a diagnosis she could have been sent home with. I am not, capable of making that diagnosis, but she was demonstrating a lot of behavior that was showing that things were not right, that she was not, being honest, that she was potentially dangerous. But she didn't have a violent history. And so when it comes to her mother, Taylor's mother, I wonder what could have been done. It's clear even in our telling of the story that she knew that her daughter was not pregnant. It was clear that she also knew that her daughter had lied about many, many things before. And, how Taylor is able to manipulate those closest to her to keep them from speaking up is, something that we'll all wonder about.
Wade is the big question mark.
Yeah.
And look, I totally get. I was, talking to Jessica and Emily, Reagan's family. It's not that, hey, I'm pregnant, I don't feel great, I don't want to have sex. I mean, like,
Right. That's not.
It's just, this is your wife, and there's no way that I would not know whether or not my wife was pregnant for that many months. What does that tell us about him and about Taylor?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think that there is kind of a perfect storm going on. They actually technically were not married, but they
Right.
were, certainly acting, playing out a lot of things. There was property that was going to be obtained. There were, cars and vehicles getting purchased. And, I think that there was a perfect storm. Could Taylor have enacted and played out these crimes with anyone? I'm not so sure. I mean, I think that there was a kind of not wanting to rock the boat, a certain level of passivity, a certain deferring to her.
He was a little younger than she, but not like
Yeah,
15 years.
there was also COVID at the time, so there was a lot of, like, using the circumstances of the time, which is, you can't come into the doctor. So she was, I think, able to always kind of have an answer. I always think about Taylor being, like, really great at being one step ahead of people and then awful at two or more steps. I wish that Wade had been able at times to think about the two steps ahead. Like, she always had an answer and he would just kind of accept that answer, because she could deflect and come up with excuses very well. But if you really think about it, if you really kind of project ahead, so many things didn't line up. And I think he just kind of wanted to believe, and our ability to accept things because we want to believe them is can be pretty unparalleled.
Do you think that at the end of the day, like, my takeaway in watching this was, this has been true about her since she was a teenager. There was problems with the first relationship where there was a baby. There was a problem with the second one. There was a problem with the third relationship. Like, everything goes really bad in ways where she is absolutely the cause of it.
Yeah.
And that this has always been who she was, which at first I was like, wow, I wonder if she did anything horrible before. But then, thankful, really, that was actually a compliment to your narrative, that eventually I followed your narrative along and I was like, oh, well, this is just what it built to.
Yeah.
That this was the level of desperation for her to maintain the narcissistic canard of being the architect of her own existence, that literally everybody and everything else would have to die before she would go down.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, right. It is defending her truth, which obviously is a lot. It's like the only thing that matters to this woman is to be able to prove people wrong and defend the lie, no matter how. Because I don't think that she went into this, and this is not excusing her. In some ways, this makes it more complicated. Like, I don't think she started this thinking that eventually she would kill someone and take their baby. I think it's that one step versus two steps thing. Like, I think all along the way, she wanted to keep Wade. I think that's what this is about. She
Yes.
wants to keep a relationship. And every step of the way, when she feels that he's pulling away, when she feels that her grasp is slipping, she just knows how to like keep it going for one more minute, one more day, one more hour. And then she ends up in a room that she's like not prepared to be in, metaphorically. Like, she keeps kind of going down this hallway until she's so lost, and it doesn't matter to her. She doesn't say, okay, well, like, it's up. This has got to end. This is insane. Like, she can't backpedal.
That's the broken piece.
That's the broken
But
piece.
even that,
sure.
So here's the question I was left with that I definitely wanted to talk to you about. It all makes sense the way you put it together. Again, credit to you as a storyteller. Like, when you watch this, it makes sense. And then I was almost ashamed to feel that way, because I think, and this is from a 30-year journalist who's covered mostly crime, I don't think I've ever covered a worse woman than this.
Yeah.
I was thinking about Warnos, but Warnos was brutalized in a way that can definitely break you. Okay. Not to make an excuse, but an explanation of real darkness. The woman in Monsters Ball and all these other ones who are like contract killers, like bad assassin, nasty, killing kids, separate category. They're almost always crazy. Andrea Yates, etc. There's almost always. Then you get your Casey Anthony. Okay. And that's the closest one I could come to this. This may be the worst woman I've ever covered in terms of not totally diseased, not non-compos mentis, not you thought you were doing something else. You're not insane. You don't even want people to think you're insane. And you did just about the worst thing imaginable, except you didn't get the other kid. That was the only place, the only box she didn't check for me would have been, and then she killed that other little girl. Thank God she did not.
Yes. And
what do you think of that?
Yeah, I agree with everything. I have a yes and to what you said, which is like, thank God she didn't hurt Reagan's daughter that was alive. But for me, it's actually also the tipping point. Not that she didn't hurt her, but her ability to go in as a mother. I'm a mother. Once you become a parent, you are the protector of like all kids, not just your own. And for me, someone who doesn't particularly believe in the death penalty, like I've said, like, I'll make an exception here, because to do that to a 3-year-old's mother, to do this while a 3-year-old is in the house, to take the mommy away from a child, like, is a level of cruelty and coldness that I will never be able to comprehend. To bring it to Reagan, I think it's also, and the way you frame this is so interesting, it's also part of the cruelty of, like, by all accounts, there are actually a lot of people that are being really good to Taylor, Reagan being one of them. Like, the idea that here's this woman, Reagan is this woman who like sees everyone kind of picking on her, not believing in her, and she decides, like, I'll give her the benefit of the doubt. I don't have any reason to go against this woman. I don't have any reason to pile on. It's not that she's not, it's not that Reagan's being naive. It's she's like, what has she done to me? That people can be cruel, especially during the age of social media. And so the idea that, by all accounts, Taylor is someone who's actually treated with a lot of grace, like Wade sticking around, not kicking her out, Reagan, having the goodness in her heart to like kind of stick up for her, to tell her own mother, oh, people are being so mean to her. And like, that's also the part that is so confounding of like, you didn't need to do this. People were actually pretty kind to you. You weren't treated with cruelty. Now, what has gone on in this woman's life to like, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And part of the reason I don't know is because I haven't been able to talk with the family, but lots of people have had very traumatic things in their life and don't resort to this.
Insane, evil, both, and if so, which leads?
Yeah. I mean, I've thought a lot about insane. No, it doesn't mean that what she did wasn't insane. But I don't think she wasn't tried. The defense didn't use like an insanity plea, and they certainly would have if that was an option. I don't think she's like insane in any kind of way that indicates that she doesn't understand what like is real.
But her thinking that she could get away with this, her thinking, her carrying it through as much as she did, like who thinks you're going to go to a hospital? This was not an unintelligent person, by the way.
Not an unintelligent.
Who thinks you're going to go to an ER and get examined and you're not immediately blown up?
Yeah. This is the thing. Like I just think she needed to like get the baby in the car. I think she needed to be able to tell Wade, I had the baby on the side of the road. Like, this isn't a big city. This isn't like millions of people. There's a woman in the next town over who you just saw, who has been, it's like her ability to kind of, so what she did was insane. I don't want to use the word insane for her because I think it gives her a pass. It is, what she did was evil. It's one of the evilest things I can imagine. Something's definitely very wrong. But it's this like slippery slope of like something's wrong with her and therefore we understand her.
Who left the biggest impression on you?
Oh God. I mean, for sure, Reagan's family, Jessica and Emily. And their ability to speak honestly and specifically about what happened to them, I was so I'm like forever changed by Jessica's ability to talk about the thing that she says about like in the days and weeks after this happened, I had to convince myself that Reagan was real. Like that is, I've never heard anyone talk about loss that way. It's so specific. I believe her when she says it. Emily, her ability to kind of condemn Taylor, to say that like hell isn't even bad enough of a place for her to go, and just their kindness, their openness, their ability to kind of trust this process, which is really scary, their ability to kind of understand the film that, and understand like why it needs to be the way it is, and to be able to talk about, like, constantly and also, as you pointed out, putting pain to purpose, that like there is a very tricky area. It's part of the reason that Taylor was able to use it this way, but like, why couldn't there be more done? Why couldn't there be a knock on her door? It doesn't mean you have to go onto Facebook and say this woman's lying, but like, could there not have been an intervention in a personal way between Wade and Taylor, saying like, listen, you're saying all these things and it's not real. Like, what's going on? Why are there websites where you can order a fake sonogram and it's not just like, oh, a gag gift. It's like, you can put your information in there. You can put the expected due date. You can put it in the health facility.
Yeah, it's like, it's designed. It's designed for the scorned woman. When we've heard this story before, it's, oh, you don't want to see me anymore.
Yeah.
Oh, well, now you're going to see me. Why does that exist?
Why does that
as a thing? I think we have that question about a lot of things. But I'll tell you what, one of the most beautiful gifts as a storyteller, and I'm not a big praiser, but I'm rarely surprised by how a story is told or by a story. Now, you had something to work with here. Don't get me wrong. This Taylor is probably, again, one of the worst people I've ever covered, let alone women. My experience just gives me more respect for you guys than men. I'm much more surprised when women do terrible things than when it's a guy. It just, especially where kids are involved, let alone pregnancies. But at the end of this, you are left with one that, right? Like, okay, I think I just heard a story about maybe one of the worst women ever Um, and what a bizarre story of, I don't know what could have been done except what you just said, which is
Yeah.
sometimes you need an intervention.
Yeah.
Sometimes it actually really matters, as opposed to what we usually tell each other, which is, "Look, Jessica, just let it go. This is who she is.
Right.
Why do you have to have her in your
It'll
life
be
then?
fine.
I don't want to hear about it anymore. I get it.
Right.
So, you got other friends. Let this one go." Maybe those sometimes it's like an extension maybe of see something, say something, that like,
Yeah.
you never know where narcissistic personality disorder is going to take somebody.
Right. There's like a version of like, it feels reminiscent of like red flag laws, which is like,
Mhm.
someone's not totally, they're displaying some kind of crazy and dangerous behavior, and they have, something that can be used as a weapon. Like that combination of things, there needs to be some intervention. It's not necessarily a lockup intervention. It's like, do you need help? What's going on
Mhm.
here? There's ways of intervening that aren't just about, taking people off in handcuffs, but
Right.
the idea that
That's
nothing
what you
can be done.
provoked in this story. I kept saying to myself, okay, so that must have been when. That's when but I don't by the end of it, I was like, no. It was always going to end up in something desperate.
Yeah.
Because this woman was too driven
So driven.
to whatever she thought as her aim. And you say it perfectly here, and your explanation comes through in the narrative. She was amazing at being one step ahead and answering that first question. She was terrible at that second and third step, so
Yeah.
terrible that her own desperation absolutely got the better of her. But I got to tell you, it's a great story.
Thank you.
And the way you tell it absolutely makes it so. Jessica, congratulations on telling a story that really makes people think in a way that I've never had one of these do before. Because usually you're like, oh, that stupid investigator, he should have followed
Right.
up on that
Right.
lead. You know what I mean?
Right.
And this is not that. This is, wow, what is in the reaches of the human heart, and what
Yeah.
can we tell ourselves, and what does that mean about who we are, and how you hear it in them saying, yeah, it's different now for us and other people, not because we're known because of what happened to our loved one, but because we don't see people the same way anymore.
Of course.
And maybe they shouldn't. So,
Yeah. Have to
Jessica,
be.
congratulations and thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank
And
you. Nice to talk to you.
much success to you.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah, really, really good job. Really, really good job.
Thank you.
Really, really good job. And I love that you made that choice
Thank you.
of, yeah, I'm not going to hear it. Nothing there. I would just be doing it so people can get little crime porn kind of deal. And I'm
Yeah.
not doing it. We got plenty of
No.
that.
No.
Yeah, good choice, kid.
Thank you.
Look forward to what you got next.
Okay. I'll let you know.
As intelligent a narrative choice and brave, really, small b, let's not get carried away, but for Jessica to ignore the most fascinating aspect of this wound up revealing a really rich story of things that you wouldn't ordinarily consider: the Wades, the friends, the mom, the league, the medical system, the nature of bad versus sick. It all comes to play in the story of Reagan and of Braxton. And that's really whose story it is. And we're able to keep the integrity of that because of the decision that the director made of not to allow us, as we often are, by the intrigue and curiosity of the killer. Here we look at it through the lens of who was killed and how it got to that point, and why was it allowed, and could it have been stopped, and what do we learn about ourselves and about the capacity and potential. And because it's not an investigative story, not really. And it really has so many counterintuitive turns in it. You show grace, you show forgiveness, you show tolerance, you show acceptance, and you wind up dead with the baby carved out of you. Maybe there is a space for confrontation and interventions and calling people on sustained patterns of bullshit before it gets to a crisis point where a desperate person does desperate things, which is what happened in the story of Taylor Parker. Now, what happens next? The chance of an appeal is very, very small, a successful one. When she's put to death, it will be a very, very rare moment in our society where a woman is killed for being the worst of what a human being can be. Thank you for going on this trip with me in a bizarre story, the likes of which I've never seen before. Have you? Thank you for subscribing and following. Tell me about it here on Cuomo Crimetime. I want your comments. I'm going to respond to them. And I'm going to keep telling you stories from the perspective of what is the untold part of that story and what it teaches us about what's out there that everybody's talking about and what's not being talked about enough. Taylor Parker, Mackenzie Shirilla. Welcome to Cuomo Crimetime. Those names are such ominous players in our space. Are these two of the worst women we have ever seen, capable of doing some of the most heinous crimes I've ever covered? Making friends with someone, long-term manipulation, beating them to death, and then when they're almost dead, cutting a fetus out of their stomach, and then trying to play it off as their own. Mackenzie Shirilla, people she loved, cared about, accelerating from a stop up to 100 miles an hour, doing nothing to stop, crashing through an intersection, through a sign, and then into a building. Homicidal, megalomaniacs, evil, or sick, or delusional, or both. This is what creates the fascination of understanding people who seem like people we know. Taylor Parker, did she lie a lot? Yeah. She have delusions about herself? Yeah. She that unusual? Held a job, had relationships, was a mother, kind of. Found men who wanted to love her, had friends-ish. Mackenzie Shirilla pretty much sizes up like a regular kind of knucklehead teen. In love, the whole relationship over high school, ups and downs. The families were close. The mother was talking to the boyfriend all the time. She was talking to the boyfriend's mother all the time. They were in their business, smoking a lot of weed, partying, but still together, living with them, plans, or not, or a darkness, or desire to control or to kill. A desperation of, I can't have my story exposed. Nothing is more dangerous than that. I must do anything to prevent against that. This story of who I am and that I'm about to have a baby is everything, and I must do anything to keep it going. Really vexing. That's why I keep using the word. Why? Oh man, it really strikes at that. It really strikes at head and heart. How are we to understand what motivated these two women? Remember, women don't do bad shit as often as men do. Not stuff like this, not homicide, let alone whatever you want to call what Taylor Parker did. Mackenzie Shirilla. How does someone get convicted for basically having the intent to kill everyone in the car, which means herself too, when she does not size up as suicidal? Are we missing something? Did the judge? And what do we see in their after the fact behavior? And what does that tell us about who they really are and what they could be capable of and what should be done with them? One of them is on death row, very rare. The other one's going to get out. Should she? What kind of people are we dealing with? Are they versions of ourselves or something different and darker? I have somebody who studies exactly this, Dr. John Mathias. And he has looked at these cases and they are of great concern to him. So I wanted to sit down to talk about the psychology at play with these two women who are points of fascination for what they were able to do to others for reasons we may not still fully understand. Here's the conversation. Dr. Mathias, thank you so much for taking the opportunity and help me with some vexing questions.
Yep, I'm happy to help. Thanks for having me.
So here's my suggestion. Taylor Parker may be the worst woman I have ever covered because I don't believe that there's a case that she's mentally ill.
That's an interesting perspective. Well, I guess we'd have to define what you mean by mental illness.
Well, she didn't plead it at trial. She didn't say she was insane. She
Right.
understood what she was doing there for. And what she did is, I think, the worst thing I've ever covered a woman doing.
It's horrendous. The level of violence is just unthinkable, for sure.
Right. Because look, women who kill their children are almost always profoundly mentally ill, AKA Andrea Yates and that whole line of cases. Very rare. Women can kill the men in their lives. They can kill the women in their lives. They can kill, but it's rare compared to men. And this type of crime, which you'll know the name of, and the rest of us will hear it and never think of it again, which is
Right.
where you cut a baby out of somebody,
Yeah.
is very, very rare, almost always male. So for a woman to do something like this is very rare.
It is. It is one of the most rare types of homicide we know of. Statistically, I think there were 12 cases over a period of 16 to 20 years. So you're right. It's very uncommon.
And a number of them are like really perverse baby stealing, where it's like
Yeah.
almost for commerce, or it's to stop it from happening because they didn't want the baby to happen. This is one the likes of which I've never heard of before, except in fiction. And what is your explanation when you look at Taylor Parker? What is your clinical suggestion about what was motivating her and how she is to be understood as an actor?
So there's something I call the fundamental theorem of criminality, and that essentially is that criminals feel weak, they feel vulnerable, they feel helpless, and they transform those feelings into feelings of power and invulnerability, oftentimes through violence, through lying. The basic premise or the basic mechanism is that violence is transformative of feelings that are unbearable, feelings of shame, weakness, and vulnerability. I think that equation applies here as well.
Desperate people do desperate things?
Basically, yeah, basically. But I would add to that and say that part of the desperation is this inability to deal with a sense of vulnerability and helplessness and weakness.
And where is that here, especially when you look at this is since a teenager? She's been having some troubled circumstances. She has a baby when she's a teenager. The relationship blows up. She loses the baby. Another one a few years later, still barely in her 20s. The relationship blows up. She loses custody of the child. A third relationship blows up. And then it's this one. What do you see? What's the pattern?
Well, I think one thing that stands out about this case is her lying. She lies about everything. She performs illness, she performs pregnancy, she performs wealth. Everything she does is performative, and it's all deceptive. And so if you look at the lying is a strategy to avoid exactly what I talked about. It's a strategy to create this fiction and this narrative that she's different than she feels. It's a way for her to avoid her shame and to repair a damaged sense of self. So I think that's how it fits the equation I'm talking about.
So is this the difference between damage and disease, like defect and disease, in terms of there's some process that doesn't work in her head, or is this just about how she feels and what she does about it?
There's definitely a developmental component. I think I don't, one of the problems with the documentary is it doesn't really get into her childhood. So we don't know if there's trauma. We know there was divorce when she was 12. We know there was some trauma. We know the divorce was fairly traumatic, but we don't know details. And as you know, her family didn't show up in the documentary, which I think speaks volumes in terms of, they don't want to be seen. They don't want to be heard, right? How many secrets are in that family? They don't want their story known.
Correct me, but pathological liars usually are covering up or there's a grift. Even though she was playing with being rich with this last relationship, Wade, it wasn't like she was trying to take his money in a way that she was going to leave him and run away with it. It was more just of a fiction of a financial nature. Where does this fit then? If she's not covering up, that she killed somebody and she's living under an assumed name and she's not trying to steal this guy's money, then what's it about?
She's essentially trying to transform some version of reality. She's trying to transform something that's unbearably shameful to her, and she's trying to make it into something that's more presentable and something that people are going to believe, and it's going to make her feel better about herself. So the wealth example is a great example in terms of she's portraying herself as this wealthy heiress to some oil fortune. That makes her feel important. It gives her some sense of significance and meaning. And so, the line here is a defensive maneuver to deal with these feelings she doesn't want to deal with shame, to maybe repair this damaged sense of self she has from childhood. There's clearly a developmental element here.
The relationship with Reagan, do you believe it was a design to get to where it ended or something else?
I don't think it was initially designed to, obviously when she did the wedding photography, Reagan wasn't pregnant, so it didn't come into play there. I think Reagan becomes an obstacle. She becomes a means to an end. So when she becomes pregnant, then Reagan becomes an important element of the story, obviously, because she sees her as a way to produce a baby that's not hers.
Why spend months trying to convince someone you're pregnant? And if you are crafty, which she is, the director had a great line. She's great at being one step ahead. She's terrible at being 2 or 3 steps ahead. Why didn't she give her the bailout of the miscarriage?
So I think the reason she doesn't use the miscarriage excuse is because Wade confronts her at the very end, maybe a week before her supposed due date, right? She keeps deferring the due date, but and it becomes more problematic, obviously, the more she defers it. But Wade confronts her for the first time and says, "I don't think I believe you." And in that moment, I feel like he's really taking away a lot of her options because he's going to expose her. And the one person she doesn't want to expose her is her boyfriend. So I'm sorry. I think, are you there?
Yeah, I got you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I lost you. Okay.
I thought you were just getting emotional there, Dr.
No,
Mathias.
I was getting emotional.
You're talking about Wade. You're talking about Wade.
Emotional because you went dark.
No, I'm here. I see you,
Yeah,
and
no,
I hear you perfectly.
I see you.
You were talking about
Yeah.
Wade, and he was going to confront her, and that's an interesting story point. The Wade factor. Is Wade a dope, or is she really conniving? Is it a mix of him being ignorant and also wanting this to be true? How do you explain a guy not knowing whether or not the woman he lives with is pregnant for this long?
Yeah, it seems peculiar. I think she certainly was able to keep him at a distance. And apparently she spent a lot of time in her bathroom, locked in her bathroom. So, but still, you're right. I don't know. It does seem peculiar that he didn't press that issue a little harder. But yeah, I think Wade seems like a nice guy. Wade seems like he's just trying to manage the situation. Does he come across as being a little naive? I mean, yes, clearly there's some red flags there. The whole fake heiress shtick, I think for most people in a relationship would have been a red flag. I think a lot of people would have probably done a double take and said, well, if you're lying about this, then I'm not sure I can trust you about anything else. But didn't seem to bother Wade.
From a clinician's perspective, when you look at somebody who does something like this, what is the line between manipulation and mental illness, or bad versus sick?
Yeah, that's a tough one. So there was a part of this documentary that did not cover her death penalty phase of her trial, and there were a couple of forensic psychologists and a forensic psychiatrist who testified. They basically argue that it was premeditated, but she does have a personality. She's multiple personality disorders. So that would kind of imply both nature and nurture. I think it's really hard to separate those in this case. There does seem to be an element of bad, of cruelty, of personality disorders. On the other hand, there does seem to be potentially some mental illness too. So, and there do seem to be developmental factors in terms of her childhood, potential trauma. It seems to me this is probably like many crime cases, it's probably a combination.
What does it take to sustain this kind of connivance? Months on end that you are pregnant, doctor's appointments, multiple diagnoses, lots of women around you who are suspicious.
I think it's a combination of maybe a personality disorder and a lot of gullible people. I think, she needs an audience here. And even though the audience is onto her, they don't seem especially willing to challenge her, or at least to challenge her too much. So that's not to say that this would have been easy to stop or prevent. I'm not sure it would have been.
I mean, it's a weird one. Have you ever heard of anything like this before? Someone said to you, hey, doc, you're a forensic psychologist. I think my friend's lying about being pregnant.
It's unusual.
And not because she doesn't want me to break up with her, or my mistress is saying we can't stop seeing each other, I'm pregnant. That is familiar territory, and people will do that and they'll fake something. Yeah. But this is different. This is not that.
Yeah, it is very unusual. And, typically a prosthetic alone isn't going to be sufficient to fake a pregnancy. I mean, if you're living with someone, as you point out, why didn't Wade try a little harder to figure this out? I mean, I don't want to blame him. He is a victim here.
That's interesting. Is there another category? Victim, assailant, or someone who's responsible. I don't really see him there, but is there a third category of shouldn't have been so dumb kind of category of useful idiot kind of category of, because again, this isn't you bought the heiress story. And I'm not trying to be harsh to this guy. He's young. He's not that young. And he was younger than she is, but he wasn't like a teenager. He's in his mid-20s at the time. The heiress thing, I'll give you. Okay. You could convince me that you're an heiress. You know what I mean? So it's the,
that would be a tough sell, but I could try.
But the hiding in the bathroom, MS, cancer, changing the due date. I've never been able to go to the doctor with you. Yeah, it's the pandemic, but still, I've never seen you naked. I mean, this is a lot, right?
Yeah. Well, you've got a lot of red flags stacking up for sure. I mean, at some point you kind of have to wonder. Yeah, you have to probe a little further and wonder what's going on. But, I mean, the other side of this is I don't know how many relationships Wade has been in. To give him the benefit of the doubt, there certainly seems to be a naivete in terms of his relationship.
He had nothing to gain. He had nothing to gain. This is all downside for him. It's terrible. I don't mean to suggest anything else. So you get to the point of slippery slope, tangled web we weave. Are there psychological dynamics there that we should introduce into our vocabulary? Like, what the layperson says as tangled web, psychologically, what does that do to you? What does it make you more capable of as someone in Taylor's position as a perpetrator?
It would suggest more possibility of chaos. I think people, if we're using your terminology, if people are weaving tangled webs, potentially they're trying to create more chaos and they're trying to throw people off balance. If you spin enough fictions and you interweave those fictions and they all clash with each other, I think it's going to be harder to discern reality at some point.
That's a really interesting point. So the lies get to be a conditioning dynamic also, where that's just the mode you're in. How does that mature, evolve, or devolve into a level of desperation that invites violence because we don't know that she's ever been violent before?
Right. There doesn't seem to be a history of violence, and that's certainly somewhat confusing.
Phishing emails, not the kind I like with an F, a PH. They happen all the time. They're getting better and better. You got all different kinds of software and troll farms and AI and automated things coming at you. It's harder and harder to see it coming, and it's harder and harder to escape it once you make one wrong move. You click the link, enter your information, and suddenly you're done. They got you in a way that is very hard to undo, unless you have OmniWatch. OmniWatch is a great countermeasure. Scans Gmail and Outlook for phishing threats before you click. Offers 360-degree identity protection. Gives you access to US-based scam experts. If something does happen, restoration specialists are available 24/7, 365 to help you recover. You're backed up by up to $100,000 in scam and ransomware coverage and up to $4 million in identity theft insurance. That's what OmniWatch is about. Don't wait until you're a victim. Click the link in the description. It's safe. Or any of the pinned comments that you see to run a free dark web scan and see if your information has already been exposed. Click the link in my description and use the code Cuomo, and you'll get 50% off your first month with OmniWatch. Look, the threat is real. OmniWatch is the way to deal with that threat.
If I don't see a history of violence in someone's past, the risk automatically for future violence is going to be less typically. So without that makes this particularly difficult, I think, to assess.
And how often do you see a case? Well, one, have you ever seen a case like this?
No, I've never assessed a fetal abduction case before. This is fetal abduction by maternal evisceration, which is even rarer. So by that, I mean, you can have a fetal abduction. You can have fetal abductions that are baby snatching. Somebody runs into a hospital and takes a baby, right? But that's not what this is. Clearly, this is a different level of violence. So these are so unusual for the perpetrator to actually go in and cut the baby out with a scalpel is next level violence
and preparation. You got to think about that. So you didn't go there saying, with any other kind of delusion. You knew that this is what it was. How often do you cover cases, or have you heard of cases?
Well, wait, Chris. She watched YouTube videos.
Yes.
So give her credit. She was well prepared. She felt like she had the medical knowledge to do this.
To do something absolutely insane, right?
Right.
I mean, I get it. Watching a video on how to wallpaper your house is ambitious.
And
to
difficult
do something
enough.
That is about the worst thing that you could do to somebody.
Right.
Right? Because killing somebody who's pregnant is like almost the worst thing that you can imagine, right? And that's why, there's a specious statistic. It's true. It's not specious, but it's misleading. The second cause of death for pregnant women, the number one is birth complication. The second one is homicide.
Right.
Why? Because you're so healthy that nothing else would kill you. Because if you had disease, then you wouldn't be pregnant. And and they're more cautious and all these things. So it winds up being true, but not because people actively hunt pregnant people. But within that realm, it's almost never, in these circumstances, it's almost always either a crime of opportunity or the father. Yes?
The father as the perpetrator in the case in cases you're talking about,
Yes.
where
Homicide ends a pregnant woman's life.
It homicide for pregnant women, it's almost always spouses or partners, mostly male. Correct.
Right. And so it's almost never women.
Correct. Yes. Yes. These are so rare.
Right. And the cases I've found where a woman was even involved, it's never been for something like this, unless it was an economic thing where there was some diabolical woman who was working with a guy who was going to steal a baby to sell it to some other couple or something like that. So this is really a one-off, which is one of the reasons I found it so fascinating. And it gets you to the point of, you do the research, but when you're doing that research, something has clicked in your head, or whatever the metaphor is that is appropriate to you as the forensic psychologist, where you are now going from lying to designing a completely evil act. And that's a very different thing than lying, isn't it?
Well, but they both operate in the realm of fiction. They both involve spinning this fantasy that somehow she can pull this off. I mean, she spent her whole life lying. So although violence might be somewhat unpredictable, it's not a stretch necessarily. If you're living in a fantasy world and you're trying to convince other people that this fantasy world is real, and you're afraid that you're going to be exposed, if there's some threat to your very being, your very identity, which has been based on lying your whole life, if there's a threat to that identity, then violence becomes an option, I think. And there was a threat because Wade challenged her and said, "I don't think you're pregnant." And she tells him.
And what does that do to somebody? What does that do? If I am a pathological liar, and you're making an assumption that I will also assume, although I don't know that it's true, which is she believed what she was saying. I always assumed she didn't believe it. She just wanted them to believe it. But let's say she did believe it, and now it's about to all come down. What does that do to me psychologically?
It's going to humiliate you. The very identity that you've spent years and years defending and building up is going to be exposed and demolished. If you spent your whole life showing people that you're not defective, that you're not vulnerable, that you're not weak, that you're significant and important, right? If you've created a foundation and a structure of lies, and then that structure is going to be blown up, decimated, that's like annihilation to her. That's almost like death. She will feel annihilated. She does, and people don't want to feel annihilated. People don't want to feel bad. They don't want to feel ashamed. They don't want to feel humiliation. It has to be one of the most difficult emotions.
Oh, really? Let's talk about that. Why does it get put as more severe in your clinical opinion than, let's say, fear?
Because humiliation gets to the heart of who we are. It gets to the heart of our identities. Humiliation is about the ego.
And why can that make me more volatile than the idea of someone coming to hurt me and me believing it's reasonable to happen?
People want to defend their egos. People want to maintain and believe that they're important, that they're significant. There's been research showing that one of the main motivations of all human beings is to feel significant. And when you undermine that sense of significance, you're literally destroying the foundations upon which a life could be built.
Is that why young people talk about wanting to be seen? You know how when people say, I want to be seen, I see
Yeah.
you?
Yes.
Like
I
that
think
wasn't a thing for my generation.
right.
Much older than you, Doc. But
Yeah.
like, I don't remember ever saying I want to be seen. If anything, I wanted people to not pay attention to me and not see me because I was afraid of what was going to come with their evaluation. But
Yeah.
what role does that play in the development of identity and what you are willing or driven to protect?
I think you're exactly right. I think there's this element of, especially with social media, and I think these days it's hard not to be seen. And so one of the challenges today, especially as you point out for children and teenagers, is to manage expectations and to manage identities and to manage feeling significant. And I think it becomes a problem in terms of how does a child feel significant when there's so much noise and so much chatter on social media and all over the place and everywhere, right? Streaming, everywhere we look, people are trying to be heard and seen and feel significant.
Yeah, I think I'm caught up in that. So, how does it go from that to, well, I'm desperate now. I have to save this, to what am I willing to do to save it? What is that step?
It's the step again. Wade tells her, "I think you're faking this. I think you're lying." She tells him in response, she says, "I'm going to give you a baby." I'm paraphrasing. She says something like that. I'm going to bring you a baby. Something like, I think she says, "I'm going to bring you a baby." That's the moment in which I feel like she's all in. She has no off ramp at that point because she's built this this fictional pregnancy. She's created this pregnancy to stay connected to him, to feel better about herself as a mother. One of her issues is she had this hysterectomy.
Yes,
And,
yes.
and so she does right. She's not. She feels. I think she feels some shame over the fact that she has problems with infertility, and so this pregnancy solves a lot of those problems for her.
Yes. Is there a chance that when she comes to, now I know that there had been some real scrambled eggs in her past already at this point,
Yeah,
but here she is, two blown relationships up, losing two kids, very, very rare for those listening and watching, for women to lose custody of their kids if they're not actively addicted and documented as such. Very rare. Okay.
yep.
So, let alone twice, very rare. She comes to, and the husband says, I consented to you getting a hysterectomy. Something that you have absolutely defined yourself by up to this point, which is producing kids, right? You can now no longer do, and you did not get to make that decision. Is there a chance, and if so, how good a chance, that that accelerated the cuckoo?
There's a huge chance that it accelerated it because her notions of motherhood and femininity are in play here. So I agree with you completely. She's the fact that she lost her children, that she can't get pregnant again, all of that I think creates a certain amount of shame. And because of that, I think this pregnancy becomes more important to her. She's much more invested in this pregnancy because of those reasons. Because I think to her, in a way, this is her last chance.
What does it take to go to someone's house in the morning, do what she did to Reagan, which is instructive, okay? It wasn't a gunshot. It wasn't a one and done. This was like a rage monster kind of killing.
Yeah.
And to then cut the baby out while they believe that the mother is still alive, and do it in a way where it may well have been observed by that kid, because that kid was hiding under the blankets for a reason.
Yeah.
The kid was hiding under the blankets at the age of 3 because there was something shocking enough to put that kid into a point of concealment, which means either she heard something or saw something or both. Take me through it.
I'd say the what it takes is lots of dehumanization, lots of objectification. I think to get to that point, she had to see Reagan as an object, as an obstacle, as a means to an end. She did not see her as a human being at some point. I think the only way you can engage in that level of violence is if you completely dehumanize the victim. When she went in there, she did not care, obviously, about Reagan, her life, her child, her children. She only cared about herself. She was so consumed by her goals and her objectives that she was going to do whatever it took to bring that baby back to Wade, as she promised. And when she walked in there, she knew her objective, and she absolutely and completely dehumanized Reagan. So when she committed that type of crime, and this is true of most heinous crimes, by the way, there typically is some level of dehumanization. Otherwise, if she had empathy, right, if she had some empathy for Reagan or connected to her at emotional level, I think it would have been much more difficult. In fact, in many of my groups where I work with felons, empathy is a huge part of the therapeutic process in those groups, because most of these felons come in with no capacity to understand how their victims felt.
Why?
Developmental trauma, abuse. There's a lot of reasons, but just this inability to deal with their emotions, this inability to understand. We all have what's called a theory of mind. We have a theory about other people and how they think and what their motives are. They lack that. A lot of felons don't have this capacity to really understand other people, or to even understand that other people exist. And so that's a version of narcissism. When you're so self-absorbed and you're so consumed by your own fictions and your own narratives, you don't care what other people think. The last thing you're thinking about is how someone feels or what their needs are. You're thinking about yourself.
Can you learn it?
It takes time. The biggest challenge in my groups is getting offenders it takes years oftentimes. It's hard to learn. I think you can learn it. Yes, it's hard. It's difficult.
You can learn how to think through what you can't feel?
Well, you have to learn to feel first. I think you have to learn to deal with some really unpleasant emotions first, which is very, very difficult. So one of the things I do is I'll have offenders write what we call empathy letters, and some of them just can't even put pencil to paper. They can't.
Where do you think Taylor Parker falls on that scale?
Oh, I mean, she's acting out in prison. She's continuing the same pattern in prison. She's continuing the pattern of lying and deceiving and manipulating. And so, I mean, I think she would struggle with it.
Would it matter sometimes in prison, women's prison less so, but it happens. I've been told this recently by a woman who was incarcerated. Finding out she killed a baby can make them want to stick something sharp in her. So far, she seems to have avoided that fate. Is that because you think she's manipulating it, or she's been kept safe from it? And what would happen if that happened to her? Is that the kind of thing that can jar you into a different mindset?
I think it's definitely a risk. She's on death row, so they're probably death row inmates, I'm sure, are probably protected more. I'm not exactly sure about her living situation, or if she's
they're in what they call a SHU,
Okay.
SHU, Special Housing Unit. So
Yeah.
they can keep you away, especially this early in her term. If it goes on and on, in Texas it may not, but if it goes on and on, then you sometimes mix more, and there can be implications for your actions. But that takes us beside the point. So she goes in, she dehumanizes. What does it mean if it is true that in flagrante delicto, while she is attacking Reagan, Reagan fights back? Reagan tries to protect her other daughter. Reagan tries to protect her belly. What does that trigger in the attacker?
Rage. If the victim is fighting back and obstructing her goal and her objective, she's going to get angry. She's going to perceive that as more of a threat, even though obviously Reagan is the one being threatened. Offenders typically see themselves as victims. They reverse that dynamic, that if she's fighting back, then more than likely she's going to become angry.
Do you think her plan was to steal the baby and keep it alive? Or do you think that she needed the baby to die, or wanted the baby to die, or was indifferent to whether or not the baby was alive or dead?
I think in her fantasy, she wants the baby to live. And I think she wants the baby to live. In her fantasy world, I think she actually can get away with this because she has manipulated and deceived so many people over such a long period of time. I think she genuinely thinks that she can grab this baby, keep it alive, and convince people that it's hers. And you see that when you look at the body cam footage in the hospital, it's mind-boggling. Because she genuinely, because she's persuaded so many people for so long of all these fictions and these fantasies, she really thinks that these people are going to believe her.
Do you think she thinks they're going to believe her, or is she trying to convince herself?
I both, but I mean, she's convinced herself for years, but I think then she believes that she sees people as dupes. I think she sees people as gullible. I mean, who stood up to her?
Guys, let me talk to you about value. All right. Uncertainty is the way of life these days. Certainly politically, we all see enough of that. But financially as well. It's really hard to know where your money is safe, where you can invest, where it will be, especially now with blockchain and crypto, what is real, what's imagined. All of this is leading us back to what has always been true. There is a reason that precious metals have endured all kinds of change and changes in the economy. It always has a real value because it's a real time-tested thing. And that's why physical gold and silver from American Hartford Gold is something for you to look into. Now, I have, okay? And this company is at the top of its industry for a reason. Do your own research, but I wouldn't be telling you about them if I didn't think they didn't deserve the respect. They have an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. They have thousands of 5-star reviews. You can have premium gold and silver directly delivered to your door, or even better, in my opinion, stored securely in a tax-advantaged gold IRA if you're thinking about the long term. And right now, if you call and mention my name, you could get up to $20,000 in free silver with your first purchase. Yeah, I know, $20,000 in free silver. That's how much you could get. Call 866-638-9707 or text Cuomo to 65532. 866-638-9707 or text Cuomo to 65532, or just click the link in the video description that's right below. Because look, gold and silver have stood the test of time because they are time tested. And in a period of economic uncertainty, you need something you know you can count on. check out American Hartford Gold. This is not a 9-year-old. She's had 2 babies. She knows the biology of it. She knows she's got to know intellectually there's zero chance that any clinician is ever going to buy that she was pregnant or that this is her baby.
Right.
But she does it anyway, and zero cognitive dissonance. There's zero apparent tension between what she knows is true and what she's trying to make true.
Well, that's where the line comes in. The line comes in to reduce the cognitive dissonance. When you have cognitive dissonance, something has to give. Either reality takes over or the fantasy wins, and the fantasy for her is always predominant.
Mm.
But you made an interesting point, which is this is an intellectual. This is emotional for her. This is purely emotional. So in that sense, if this was intellectual, I think at an intellectual level, she clearly knows that she can't get pregnant and she's not pregnant and she knows what she did. But this is not, this works on an emotional level, on a very instinctive emotional level. That's where her manipulation operates. And she's perfected that. And nobody's really challenged her.
How do you understand the level of planning and the fact that in different aspects of her life, fairly normal?
Well, if by normal you mean manufacturing illnesses that aren't real.
No, that stuff is all abnormal. But like Reagan, liked her. The family thought she was okay. She got Wade to love her, and she was able to be employed and stuff like that. She was able to check some boxes.
That's true. But I mean, her relationship with Reagan was a manipulation. If you remember when she was the wedding photographer, she drew Reagan in by playing this victim role, right? She played this. She was divorced and she was struggling with depression. I don't remember the exact specifics.
Right. She definitely gave her a story. Hold on one second. Let me just, my wife is taking off to go see our family. Sweetie. I love you. I'm doing an interview, but I got to say that I love you before you take off.
I just texted you. Yeah, I will text you from the plane, on the plane, whatever, and we're taking off, and then I'll call you tomorrow. Your time, not too early. Are you guys driving out tonight?
Don't worry about that. No, tomorrow morning. I love you and try to get some sleep,
I love
okay?
You too. Okay, I love you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Sorry.
So that was sweet, by the way. That I've never been on a show where somebody took a moment to do that. That was nice.
Here's my rule. You know how in your professional experience, when you're helping somebody get through trauma, okay?
Yep.
You got to make some decisions about what it meant to you. The stoicism that everybody's fallen in love now, that I actually studied in college, and never stopped. I don't control what happens, but I get to control how to feel about it, right? Now, sometimes it may take you into the realm of delusion about what happened, how you choose to feel. But I made a decision after I got shit canned and I went through all that stuff.
Yeah. Sorry about that, by the way.
No, don't be. I set myself up for it, really. When I took the time to process it. And by the way, my therapist, who's not a forensic, but a clinical psychologist, he ran Mount Sinai for a number of years. His name is Daniel Rosenberg. He said to me at one point, I was telling you to stop. I was telling you, you can't help them anymore. This is over. It's too far gone. I was telling you, the media is coming for you.
Yeah.
And you didn't listen. Now, not only did I not listen, not only do I not fucking remember that, by the way, even though he was like, oh, you don't? Click, so it happened exactly the way he says it happened. Yeah. Not only did I not recall that, but I had no idea that it wasn't just me, Mr. Self-defense instructor who likes a fight, who was taking this on. It was my wife and my kids. And I was not even owning that, thinking about it, considering it. So one of the things I did to, not drink myself into a puddle coming out of it was some shit's got to change. my job will never define my family. It is hard for me to say I'm not what I do. Yeah, I am. Yeah, I am. There's something more to this than a vocation. Uh, this
Yep.
is this is a identity. This is not, I'm a firefighter. I'm a volunteer firefighter. It was another thing I decided to do was I got to help. I got to help something because in this
Yeah.
job, you never feel like you're helping. Um,
True.
so one of the changes I made was not to belabor it, but they come first and they will call me while I'm on television at NewsNation. And sometimes it's really fucking stupid. And they know I'm on television and they're old. And they'll call and they'll be like, hey, you in a commercial? And I'll be like, no, I'm not on a commercial. What are you calling me for? And they'll say, did you use the rest of the A1 sauce or is it somewhere else? I'll say it's where it always is. Goodbye. And I'll hang up. And the audience over time has gotten to understand that, all right, this is just what he does. And it's not like in the middle of a school shooting or something that I do it. But, that's just the rule. If you're dumb enough to call, I'm dumb enough to answer. Anyway, and I'm always a little worried.
I love it. I love it, by the way. I respect that. And thank you for doing that. My thing is life is short. So pick your battles. And I've got very few battles, like my family. My family's my biggest battle. And then after that, work. So yeah, I get it.
Yeah, I've also learned that, and this is, even as a fighter, and I've been a fighter, literally since I was like 11. I was junior Golden Gloves then I was jiu-jitsu, and then it was this and it was that. And now it's been self-defense for a lot of years. I almost never win a fight. I almost never win. And I almost have no control
in the ring or
these
outside
conflicts.
or both.
Well, but even then, my hands hurt, my elbow hurts, my knees.
I do
twisted.
boxing, by the way. I train with a guy here in Vegas.
Oh, real? Oh, you know what? I have a great guy out there. If you ever want to try to make the switch from boxing, which is great, but boxing is a sport. Boxing is a sport. And I tell guys all the time, boxing's not going to help you when I hit you in the head with that mug. There's a guy who's got a great academy out there who's a great coach who does self-defense.
Okay.
And oh my God, is he good? It's so practical. It's such a great set of cues for how to set yourself up where you can use your ability to not get hit, and how to strike. I'll send you his information after this.
Yeah, that would be cool.
But my point is that I always lose. Every time I'm in conflict, I lose. I may not lose as bad as my opponent in an actual physical fight, but I'm never unscathed.
Right.
And to not fight, again, the Stoics, the greatest revenge is to not be what hurt you. That's what I keep trying to tell myself because I'm still haunted and hunted. Anyway, back to this shit. So she dehumanizes.
Yep.
So she's able to perform. The woman resists, fighting for her life, her child's life. Now she's enraged because perversely she sees herself as a victim, and this woman is actually making it difficult for her to survive in her head.
Yep.
Do you think she was aware of the other child and made a conscious decision to leave them alone, or did she probably not know because she wouldn't leave a witness, even though it's a 3-year-old? Or is it the mother in her clicking in and not killing a child, even though she just killed one?
I think she just, I don't think she was focused on the other child. I don't think she would have had time to harm the other child. I think she knew her objective. It was to go in, pull the baby out, take the baby home alive. I don't think she cared about anything else.
But she did have some time, Doc, because she took her out, changed her clothes, cleaned herself up, got in the car, and then perpetrated the fraud. So there was process there, and process is opportunity.
Yeah, I don't. But in terms of the child that survived, I don't think she necessarily. I don't think that child was on her radar necessarily. I think her focus was getting the child in the womb, pulling that child out, taking that child home to Wade, and getting everyone to buy this fiction.
And how do you explain never giving up the ghost? Never saying, okay, all right, I get it. I'm not pregnant. Never. Never. Everything is an excuse structure, or she just avoids the issue.
It goes back to that idea of being humiliated.
Mm.
It goes back to that idea of feeling shame and humiliation. She has to maintain this fiction. Otherwise, her identity collapses. Her identity disintegrates. And as I said earlier, that to her, that's like annihilation. That's like death. She built her whole life on this edifice of lies.
So it's much scarier to own that than it is to continue it.
Absolutely. You know, in the podcast we did on this, I talked about Pinocchio as an example.
Mm-hmm.
And the difference is that with Pinocchio, Pinocchio actually grows up. Pinocchio's a child, and the metaphor of the toy becoming a boy, right? Pinocchio actually accepts reality. Pinocchio actually faces reality, takes responsibility, accepts the fact that his father loves him, and that's when he becomes a boy. And so in a way, you could argue that this is a similar story. This is a story about growing up, and that's what she refuses to do. Growing up is facing the real world and accepting the consequences of your behaviors.
Except she never got stuck with the growing nose.
Right. Well, but she had the growing prosthetic. Right. That was her version of the nose.
The silicone nose.
I don't know, by the way, I don't know if she kept buying new prosthetics that were larger. I guess.
I mean, look, that is part of the thing here that was weird. But remember, it was during the pandemic. So
that's true.
People were more closeted in general, in her
That's
case,
true.
literally. So do you believe that someone like a Taylor Parker is a rightful candidate for the death penalty?
I mean, you're getting into issue. I think you're kind of getting into philosophical terrain about the death penalty here.
Well, assuming that it is rational and allowable under the circumstances of the most malicious of homicidal behavior. Does she check those boxes by any definition?
You'd have to say yes, right? I mean, she took 2 lives. The crime was just unthinkably heinous, brutal violence, senseless violence. Yeah, just horrible.
What is the chance of rehabilitation on any level?
At the moment, it seems like zero. But, you know, as a psychologist, I have to say that there's some chance because I like to stay hopeful and I believe that everyone can change. And so small chance, maybe 5% chance I don't know, you know, is she capable, like Pinocchio, is she capable of accepting facts, accepting reality? Can she grow up, in short?
Is she just delusional, or is she delusional and evil?
I mean, I'm a little hesitant to use the term evil.
I know you are.
But which of course means you had to push that issue. But
psychologists don't like the word.
Yeah. I mean, I think this kind of goes back to our nature nurture discussion earlier. She's got problems. The way I would put it is she's incapable of escaping her fantasy world.
You think that there's a chance that she would hurt more people if she was on the outside?
I think she would have a difficult time integrating in society again. For sure.
Now, let me pivot with you for a moment here. A very vexing issue for me is another woman who is considered a terrible woman. Different than Taylor, but same universe of speculation. Mackenzie Shirilla was found guilty because a judge determined in a bench trial that she, beyond a reasonable doubt and in very little amount of deliberation time, she intended to drive at 100 miles an hour into a sign, through an intersection, into a school, which means Mackenzie Shirilla had the intent to kill everyone in the car, which means Mackenzie Shirilla had the intent to kill herself. My problem is, I totally understand the evidence in the trial. I understand the data. I understand that there is no data that suggests she did anything to stop the rate of acceleration. And I get what that suggests. I also get what it suggests about her attorney that thought a bench trial was the right way to go. But, and I know the context of the text messages, which I find unconvincing. And I don't understand how you see the intent to kill herself when the woman does not seem suicidal before or after. And I don't know what to make of that. I'm not saying she's not criminally responsible. Of course she is. She did it. But when you look at Mackenzie Shirilla, the idea that she is what true crime says she is, which is this is a bad person who was a psycho who wanted to kill everybody in the car. Does she seem suicidal to you?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. It's
the only kind I ask, Doc. Only kind I ask.
It seems to me, yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm not used to that. It seems to me that looking at the impact on the wall, it seems to me that she veered to the left so that the driver's side wasn't impacted as much. Even though she never put on the brake, they didn't talk about this in the documentary, but you could see clearly that the impact was on the passenger side of the car.
The prosecutors believe that it was the adjustment after the sign, and that she may not even been conscious after hitting the sign. That sign was a real sign. So that the car may have turned, but not because she turned it, certainly in their estimation, because it would have been a last clear chance argument for her defense attorney, which he did not make. And they say that the slipper being stuck under the thing wasn't that it was stuck before, but that once it struck the sign, that was as likely as anything else. But let's say she did turn to the left. Does that mean that she only had homicidal intention, not suicidal? Is it reasonable to believe that someone can drive at 100 miles an hour through a sign and then decide, I don't want to die, but never touch the brake?
I think you'd have to say that there were some suicidal intentions, because if you're going to drive your car 100 miles per hour into a brick wall, you're going to have to accept some risk that that's going to harm you. So there has to be some suicidal thought or intent. But does she really want to kill herself? That's debatable. I think she appears to me to be more homicidal than suicidal. But again, if you decide to drive your, car, even if it's a Tesla and it's going to drive for you, into a brick wall, there's a good chance that you're going to get hurt.
How often is it that someone who is suicidal before something like this does nothing to try to hurt themselves after something like this, when there's been such a horrible consequence from the event? Like, what's the chance that it gets, that it doesn't manifest itself? So you wanted to kill yourself in the moment, and then after killing your boyfriend, who you supposedly loved, and one of your best friends, and screwing yourself up, that you don't want to hurt yourself anymore, and you never try to hurt yourself, and you never speak to it, you never make any claims like that? Isn't that rare?
It's peculiar. Wasn't she placed on suicide watch for a bit?
She was, when they were trying to figure out how she felt about what had happened, but it wasn't like, I'm going to kill myself, I'm going to kill myself. As far as we know, and her parents say, no, she's never been suicidal a day. By the way, if I'm them, I don't say that, for what it's worth. Second, when you look at Mackenzie Shirilla, I don't remember anything that happened that night. Does that happen? Yes, especially with head trauma. Does it happen a lot? No. What do you make of that?
Well, as someone who hasn't met her and assessed her, or done any testing with her, it's really hard to assess that. But I mean, my instincts tell me that she's malingering. I don't think she knows what happened.
You know what Straight Arrow News is? I'll tell you what it is. A great opportunity for you to create your own source of trusted information. All right? They do something that's becoming surprisingly rare. Straight Arrow News focuses on facts, context, and transparency. There's no agenda. They don't have a bias, okay, other than being better than other services. Politics, economy, crime, stories impacting your family. Straight Arrow gives you a curated, contextualized look at what is out there in terms of information. In-depth reporting, bias-free articles, exclusive updates, access to journalists who are focused on one thing, helping you understand what's really happening so you can make your own critical thinking decisions. So if you're tired of the noise, and you want to create a safe space for you to be a critical thinker, check out Straight Arrow News through the link on your screen and in my description, okay? SAN for straightarrownews.com/Cuomo. I love their tagline, fear no fact. But then why wouldn't she make up a story? Because she could have said, oh, I remember. Dom grabbed the wheel, or Dom pushed my face, or Dom was high and said, let's have some fun. And, or, my friend told me, let's see how fast this goes. She could have made up something. Or she could have said, I had a pot seizure.
But why go there? If she puts a story in play, it's going to be subjected to scrutiny.
But if she can't explain away the data, she's going to get convicted. She had to know. Everybody knew she did it, and it looked really bad. And the only explanation that would make it not on her is if something else happened in the car that we're not aware of to defeat the data, which says you did nothing but accelerate and hold the wheel straight. So, and because the theory is she's a manipulative liar. So if she's a manipulative liar who's capable of wanting to hurt people, even kill them, why wouldn't she make up a story to get herself out of it? She clearly didn't want to go to prison.
I think, like Taylor Parker, no one has ever held her accountable. No one's ever challenged her. So I think she believed, or maybe someone advised her to do this, but she thought that by saying that she had amnesia during that moment, or blacked out, that was the easiest way to go. Why spin some stories that can be, again, why spin some stories that can be scrutinized or can be challenged in court? The simplest way to go for her, because she thinks, like Taylor Parker, that no one's going to challenge her, no one's going to hold her accountable, and her parents never did that. Her parents still haven't done that. Her parents are on this crusade to get her, to free her, or that she's innocent. And so it seems like in that set of circumstances, perhaps the best way to go is just to deny everything, just to have a blackout.
And psychologically, what does that do for you?
It allows you to believe what you want to believe. It allows her she knows what happened, probably. I mean, I don't know for sure. I mean, is it possible that the trauma of the situation created some type of amnesia or dissociation? Sure. That's possible.
Watching the documentary, reading what you have, how do you size her up? What does she fit into? Another very, very rare crime, because it wasn't like drunk driving, end of a night of partying, went too fast, shouldn't have driven. I can't believe this happened. This is not described that way. This is described as an intentional homicide. They did not want to give her manslaughter. which I thought it should have been. I was actually a little surprised she got bound over, to be honest. She was 17 at the time.
Yeah.
This could have easily been an accident, especially with the level of THC that was in her system. And the attorney did not argue diminished capacity, which I thought was weird also.
This is a type of domestic violence.
Really?
This is a case of sort of Romeo and Juliet. Romeo and Juliet meets Othello meets like the Fast and the Furious. Something like that.
Othello because the guy in the back was black?
No, Othello because Othello wants to possess Desdemona.
I know.
Romeo and Juliet because young stupid love, right? Like, I mean, this is the case of, I think, of her basically saying, if I can't have him, no one will. He has this intent to leave, and so you have possessiveness. You have this young, naive love that she doesn't want to lose. And then, I haven't watched a lot of the Fast and Furious movies, but some version of driving out of control, I guess. So, right, if you combine those elements, so domestic violence in the sense that she's possessive. And what makes it unusual is the fact that most cases of domestic violence homicide are driven by men and or teenage males.
Now, she would argue you're right, and it was him who grabbed the wheel. There are other text messages that show he was the one, not in the incident that killed him, but this incident that, I was capable of this because I threatened to do it before. No. He was threatening to do it to me in that incident in the road where the friend showed up and I was on the text thread with his mother. He was threatening it to me. I wasn't threatening it to him. Does that change it in the context that she never did anything to hurt him before this, as far as we know?
Well, there's video. You saw the documentary. There's videos of her absolutely losing it, being controlling and yelling, and those are not good signs. I mean, I suppose every relationship has conflict, but threatening someone is probably a little beyond conflict. And as far as those texts go, the context of that it was confusing in the documentary because the context of all that was not clear. It seemed to me like some of that was taken out of context.
Yes, in his favor, or in favor of damning her. And then at the end, probably to cover themselves from a litigation perspective, they say, "Hey, there's new evidence. There are more texts, and it didn't go down that way. I went down this way." Well, even still, domestic violence. But how often does someone who wants to hurt somebody else do something that is so potentially damaging to them?
It's not murder or suicide is not that uncommon. I mean, it's a little less common than homicide for sure. But when you get to the point where you're going to murder someone else, murdering yourself or committing suicide comes into play for sure, because you're not rational in that moment. Self-harm becomes an option during a lot of those scenarios. And especially in cases, most murder suicides are, again, they're domestic violence related cases. And if you see this as that type of crime, which I do, then it becomes more likely.
What does it mean to you when she's in the documentary and she sits down with done up hair and makeup and says to the lawyer off camera, "Did I hit all the right points? Because I really want to nail that." Is that just being young and dumb, or does it suggest something to you?
Well, she's obviously sticking to a script. I think she's trying to curate a certain image of herself. She's playing to the Netflix audience, or she's playing to the public. She's trying to appealing to their sympathy and trying to make her case publicly, for sure.
The way
She doesn't look good.
No, she doesn't. The way they paint her after the incident, moving on with her life, trying to do something with Instagram, having girlfriends on the inside, is all of that instructive, or is it just what happens, especially with a young person?
Well, there's another parallel here with Taylor Parker in that she hasn't done well behind bars. She hasn't done well while being incarcerated. She keeps acting out as well. I'm not sure. I'm not totally current on that, but that suggests deeper pathology potentially, that if you're acting out, if you're sentenced, right? If a normal person is sentenced to prison for homicide or any type of violence, typically the typical response is that you learn from that and you adjust your behavior accordingly. You don't start acting out and going on this rampage.
What is the line between a parent trying to save their kid because it's their kid and a parent who is why their kid was in the problem in the first place? And where do you think Mackenzie's parents fall based on what you've seen?
They definitely seem to be fairly lax. They seem to be quite capable of enabling her. They don't seem to set very good limits. And again, that's another parallel with Taylor Parker, I think.
Now, that's fairly common as a mediocre parent myself, where when they said, look, we could tell her don't smoke weed. I took the door off her room. I grounded her. I had her here. She's 17, 18. What am I going to do? Every time she leaves the house, what am I going to never let her leave the house? I hear that, but it also is assuming that the marijuana was everything. And I don't mean not other drugs. I mean, in terms of behaviors, I think the marijuana was the least of it. I don't think smoking weed makes you violent, or give you delusions of wanting to hurt anybody,
Well, if you get into some type of cannabis psychosis, maybe, but yeah, that's rare. So if you're smoking a lot of weed.
She was smoking a lot of weed. And again, we know she was smoking a lot of weed that night. We know it was in her system in really high amounts. And the only reason I'm puzzled by it as an attorney is I know that you had a lot of THC in your system. We all know that it can affect your judgment. And they screwed up the sample at the hospital. So I can pretty much argue it any way I want because they screwed it up. So they didn't really get to test it in a way where they're going to be able to mess with my reckoning of how big it was a factor. And they don't even argue it. But with the parents, what is that line? So you say enabling. How are we supposed to understand it in the context of young love? They were always together. They fought a lot, but they were never separated in any real way. They were together all through high school. He was now out of school and they were still together. They were living in the same place. They were all very close and knew each other well. And you see that familiarity in his texts with her mother and her text with their mother. I've never heard anything like that. Nobody involved with my kids, 23, 2016. Nobody talks to me the way she was talking to Dom's mother about how involved in their relationship she was, how involved her mother was in their relationship. So what does that speak to in terms of, because they weren't that hands off because she had a pretty good read on what was happening.
Lots of family dysfunction, poor boundaries, poor communication, kind of all the things that go into, or at least not the right type of communication, or at least not healthy communication.
Right. Not all closeness is good closeness.
Right. Exactly.
Bad kid, troubled kid, sick kid, misunderstood kid, all of those, some of those.
Spoiled kid, self-absorbed kid, right? But I don't know. Yeah, I think most of those, but how much of that is being a teenager also? I think that's where this is complicated. She's young. I think that's one of the reasons that she wasn't sentenced to more time is because of her age and the judge.
Well, they tried her as an adult, which was the big decision. I mean, this could have been tried as a juvenile, manslaughter, and a very different course. That was denied, and on the appeal, it was denied. So That means that they saw something in this case that played to what we call in the law scienter, which is malice aforethought.
Yeah.
And they did not want manslaughter. And that's why they didn't touch diminished capacity, because they wanted the full intent crime of homicide. Do you think that was the right call here? Not because they got the conviction, but from a psychological standpoint.
Yeah, the legal part I kind of leave to you guys. I kind of leave
Right.
that to the judicial system. But I mean, not pushing the brake pedal has to be significant in terms of premeditation, I suppose. But I mean, you could make an argument for manslaughter. I
What
don't
do you
necessarily
find?
agree with it.
Right. And that's my last question. What do you find interesting about this that you took the time to examine it?
I think a lot of the issues we've talked about, it's just how unusual both of these cases are, and the similarities of both of these cases. There are so many similarities. If we see Mackenzie as a case of domestic violence, just how unusual it is for a female adolescent to be this possessive and this consumed by the possibility of violence, to go to that extra step of planning out this type of homicide, it's really unusual. As you point out, it's just highly unusual.
Two real vexing cases.
Yeah, for sure.
Dr. John Mathias, I love the way you think about these things. I love the struggle in your process of understanding what can seem a little inscrutable, what can break different ways. I think it's what makes this analysis, because we look at a Mackenzie Shirilla, seems like a lot of kids I know. You look at a Taylor Parker, seems like a lot of people I know. Yeah, but she
Right.
lied a lot. Who doesn't? Yeah,
Right.
but then they did this. And that's when they go from someone who's in the struggle like the rest of us to a monster. And the question is why? What made them in that moment? I appreciate you. I look forward to doing this again, Dr. Mathias.
Yeah,
Thank
I'd
you.
love to. Thanks for having me. I'm glad I finally have a chance to meet you. I watched your shows during COVID, when you had COVID and you were in lockdown in your basement. No, in your like lower level.
In my basement. Yep.
And this is before I got it, by the way. And I thought, holy crap, I better not get COVID. I don't know. If Chris is struggling like this, I'm doomed. So I got it. I'm okay. But anyway, thank you for the work you do. It's a pleasure meeting you. I appreciate what you do.
I appreciate it. I look forward to doing it again. Take
good.
care, Doc. Dr. John makes a lot of points. What's most interesting to me is what he struggles with to understand why it's gray. It's gray. And that's why we're so fascinated, because you never really know for sure, especially when they don't testify, especially when they don't have a story, especially when one of them says she doesn't even remember what happened. Amazing how people who size up like the people you know in your own life can be something that you would never imagine could be anywhere near you, let alone someone kind of like you or someone you know. Do you agree or not with what Dr. John and non-Dr. Chris had to say about Taylor Parker and Mackenzie Shirilla and their parents and the people around them, and how they size up to one another and their similarities and their differences? Should they be compared at all? Very, very, the word again is vexing. But thank you for subscribing and following. Thank you for watching Cuomo Crimetime. Thank you for being a critical thinker, a free agent, someone who's open to ideas and wants to see them chewed on and considered and being open. It's beautiful, and I love it. Thank you for allowing me to be part of that process with you. The challenges are real. If we stick together, we'll get to a better place of understanding, and maybe in terms of how we see crime, how we see society, how we understand things in a way that makes us all a little bit better.